Mute.
Hello?
Mute.
Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, it is Rum and Coke night because, well, I need a Rum and Coke night, and that's all that matters. Because if I want something, god damn it, I'm gonna get it. But anyways, so this is gonna be Rum and Coke edition. The fact that I'm in Twitter jail and I had to be slumming down on Facebook for a while, and we all know that I can't stand Facebook. I think Twitter's the bottom of the barrel, but I gotta tell you, I'm gonna change my position, and I don't do that often. Facebook is the bottom of the barrel. It is worse than freaking Twitter. I have not seen the amount of ineptitude, the amount of dumb fuckery as I have in the last couple of days on Facebook. And these are from the theist groups, right? I mean, I've slummed in some other ones. I got kicked out of one that the same day, the same day I joined, because my reasoning was too sound, and they could not refute the reasoning. So they were like, "This group isn't for you." I'm like, so basically, you don't want people that can actually argue properly? Okay, fair enough. So, anyways, Hogtie's like, no way this is going to turn out well. No, it's not going to turn out well. It's going to be actually pretty bad, actually. But anyways, I got Brian here, I got Midnight Sparkle. The link to join is in the video description. If you want to come in, it is Zoom I'm using. I'm not using Hangout. I'm not using G+. Zoom, I have to actually approve you. So if I know who you are, you can come in. If you don't, well, you still can come in, but I got to check you out first. So, but anyways, I just out of curiosity, what is your guys' experience with Facebook? Would you say that Facebook is like the bottom of the barrel, or Twitter? Because I don't use Facebook that much, but holy Christ, are these people stupid?
I think Facebook, it's so funny. I started Facebook back in 2005, I would say, back when it started. And I remember when you had to have a college ID for it, and then it was opened up to high school, then everybody. And for a while, it was kind of good, I thought. It was kind of, vibrant. And then, I don't know, I just don't even go to Facebook anymore. I would put Facebook below Twitter, in my opinion. I don't want to go there.
No, I think you're right. I mean, there are some good groups. Don't get me wrong. The Evolution Creationist group, really good. It's got about, I think, 30,000 members or something like that. But most of them, for the most part, are just a bunch of trolls. And I don't mean like just atheist trolls. There's theist trolls. There's just people that don't know how to actually have a conversation. Now, again, I'm not expecting much, right? I mean, I think when you go to one of these groups, you have to realize you're not dealing with the creme de la creme. You're not dealing with the Hogtie champs, right? So, when Hogtie, and by the way, welcome to the live chat. It's been a while. When he posts something in the Great Debate community, he posts something interesting, right? Maybe like over the top and long and involved. I like the fact he actually used a too long don't read kind of thing, but it's interesting, right? He always makes his rebuttals interesting, and I take him to heart. I'm like, okay, I see what he's saying, or if I don't see what he's saying, I try to figure it out. No, that's not how it works on Facebook. I literally posted something that was like 4 paragraphs long, a very good argument. Within not more than 3 seconds, I had people going, "That's just stupid." I'm like, you didn't read it. No, I didn't read it. It was too long and wordy. Then how do you know it's a stupid argument?
Yeah, and I think that's the problem. I think that's why I like the GDC so much. It's so sad with the whole Google Plus thing, but
well, we don't know what's going away yet. We don't know what's happening, so don't get all paranoid yet. We don't know if the community is going to be affected by this.
Well, no, and I'll say this: I really enjoy, and thank you, Steve, for kind of making this and making the non-cycle. I'm not trying to suck up too much, but
Oh, feel free. It's okay.
yeah. Well, I go when I ask some, a question that I'm kind of dealing with or wrapping my head around or want to get some viewpoints on, and also, I've been called out for being wrong in there, and people have been like, you're off the base here." So it's a good place.
Not in your statistics, though.
Oh no, not there.
Yeah. You know your math and stuff.
Well, what's his name in the GDC is a really good programmer. He said he was teaching his wife how to program, and I really admired that. And he did a challenge. There was this challenge where he had to get it to like fizz buzz or something, and he had it going in only like 28 characters, and I couldn't get mine down below like 40. So he definitely beat me there.
Well, we have to figure out something. I like the fact that there's a higher caliber in the actual great debate community, G plus, right? I mean, it's not like it's the Facebook groups, because those guys are just not interested in actually even dealing with the arguments. And when you do something, it's not just me. There's a few other people that actually know what the hell they're talking about, and even they're going, what Steve says is actually correct. I mean, what's the argument against him? And they're like, they're just by fiat asserting something. And I'm like, do you understand that when you have a rebuttal to an argument, you need to give actual reasons why the argument you think is wrong, not just throwing out fallacies that don't apply. Because I see that a lot. They're like, well, that's committing this fallacy. Well, if you think it's committing that fallacy, you need to show how it's doing that. And they get so many fallacies wrong.
I just had an argument from authority against me in a YouTube comment. We were talking about communism and socialism, and the person just said to me, "Well, I have a degree in political science," and that's about the extent of their comment. And I'm just like, "Well, that's nice, but I can tell you differences." They're not saying that they're similar; they're saying that they're the same, and I can't take those kind of arguments.
Yeah, I mean, the other day, you didn't notice we had somebody who was on the non sequitur show that all they did was argument from authority. Every word was, oh, this person says this person says that. And at that point,
Yeah,
you're not arguing against the person. You're arguing against a bunch of range of people that they're bringing in that you could never cross examine.
that was the history teacher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was
It was bizarre, wasn't it? I mean, you were correcting him. Ocean was correcting him. A lot of people were correcting him, and all you said, well, this person argues this. Well, you know what? That person isn't here. That person's been dead for 200 years. Okay. I mean,
and I've never seen Ocean raise his voice or get irritated.
Oh, got pissed.
And he was like, "Damn it, just." Every moment was just, this person said this, well, so and so says this, and you just don't need to give. I don't know. It wasn't working for me either. I don't think it was good argumentation. And then the ending, which kind of threw me for a loop, was when he said, I just want you to know that there's a savior, and there's a better way, and I'm here to tell you that better way. And I don't know. That's not convincing. That's just preaching.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Sure.
Excuse me, and I'm not saying this is like a good or bad argument, but for me, if I'm going to be listening to somebody who I know is just bullshitting when it comes to either the sciences, like for example, they're young Earth creationist. Obviously, I've been doing this a very long time. I know pretty much every young Earth creationist argument out there. Would you say that there's probably nothing new under the sun? Probably no young Earth creationist argument that I have not heard of before. If there is, it's pretty minor, but I probably have heard of most of them, I would think, by now. Correct?
I agree 100%. They just gish gallop back to the first one after a while.
Right. It's a cyclic thing, right? They just go through the whole thing and then start at the beginning again. But if God wants me to think that He exists, why is He sending these people that are already I know are wrong from the get go? Because isn't it more likely the case that if somebody is completely wrong all the time, take for example a member of the Clown Core Posse, right? Not mention any names, but people that are members of that CCP that are just consistently wrong about everything when it comes to science. Now, if they said, hey, Brian, you know what? Let me tell you about this particular thing in science. From past experience, aren't you going to go, you know what? I'm going to doubt you.
Yeah,
right?
Especially if I see them using something we've already discussed and we kind of agreed it was faulty, and then a year later they're using it again. No, I would doubt everything they said on other related topics.
And that's normal, would you not say?
Yeah, it goes with when you judge someone's ability to reason, and if you really want to, you look at a person as a reliable source or an unreliable source. And if a person is constantly being deceived, you don't know that they're wrong, but you just would say, I don't know if I can trust the information you're giving me. You've given me wrong information in the past.
Exactly. And there's a probability there. By the way, just so you can see, it's Rum and Coke night. I'm drinking blonde ale tonight. So there you go, blonde ale. Um, but yeah, I mean, like for example, I'll just use Hogtie again in the live chat. Hogtie's pretty reliable, right? He's a smart dude. He's got a pretty damn good education. He's not a dumbass. So he when he says something, you're probably going to take it to heart and go, yeah, there's probably some validity to that, right?
Agreed.
As opposed to somebody who doesn't know what the frick they're talking about. So when I go to these Facebook groups, and again, not going to be for much longer because I'm slumming there. Um, when I see somebody that just is continually saying something over and over again, it's just demonstrably wrong, and then they say, "Oh well, Jesus loves you." Okay, that's great, but you're not really convincing me. And if Jesus existed in a supernatural type of way, he's picking the wrong people to get to me. Would you, would
Yeah.
you, you know?
Well, I just had someone recently tell me that they knew that their faith was right because of personal experience, and I said to them, "Well, that is that enough to convince you?" And they said, "Yes." And I said, "Is that enough to convince me?" And they're like, "Well, I guess that wouldn't convince you." And I said, "Well, then I don't think it's good to tell people you were convinced by personal." And I don't think people realize the faults in their arguments. They realize what convinced them, and I don't know. The thing that gets me is the logic and reason that's missing that we don't even teach people growing up. They don't learn it. So
By the way, Hogtie, I wasn't going to point that out that I corrected you on something. I would never do that to you in public in open air that I corrected you on something. I would never do something like that. Um, but anyways, I don't even know if I corrected him. I think there's two different ways of doing it, kind of thing. You know. But anyways, yeah, when it comes to personal testimony, I have no problem with that. I may be an outsider there. I might be an outlier. That I got no problem for somebody to say I believe this because of personal reasons. I just don't care. Right? That's fine. I don't think it's anything wrong to do that. Now, somebody can say, well, then you have a relativism thing. Then if you have to accept that one person has a personal testimony, you have to accept them all. And I don't think that necessarily follows. Um, Again, before we went on air, Brian and I were talking about right and wrongness, right? And one of the things I was telling him is that I'm not quite sure there's a property called wrongness. I don't know what it means, right? Um, oh yeah. By the way, I had no idea how to even address that Hogtie. Hogtie pointed a X-ray up, right? And I have no experience reading X-rays, so I couldn't even begin to do a diagnosis like that. Nothing I've looked into. So I'm going to defer to experts that have that kind of expertise, right? But anyways. Yeah, I know my limitations, right? I don't pontificate on crap that I have zero experience on, and I've never read anything on how to read an X-ray. I couldn't even tell that was an ankle or kneecap or elbow. I don't know what the hell it was. It could have been a skull for I know. I don't know the difference. Um, but we were talking about property of wrongness, right? And I think that when people talk about right and wrong, it's very hard to really define those terms. Same thing with good and evil, right? If you define them the wrong way, you're going to end up with a naturalistic fallacy. Um,
mhm.
so when we talk about something right or wrong, yeah, we can discuss it normatively, no problem there. But once you get to the meta ethics of it, of what is right and wrong, I think it's a very difficult concept because I'm in one of those weird positions where I kind of teeter back between like moral nihilism, which is error theory, and I like moral universalism, which is actually a form of objective reality. It's kind of like a watered down version of moral realism. You've got three main categories in objectivism, right? You've got moral universalism, you've got moral realism, then moral absolutism. So it's kind of like the weaker version of all three, but it's still a realist position. It's still a objectivist position, right? And a lot of people don't like that morals can be objective. So it's weird when one day I'll wake up going, yeah, this position metaethically sounds pretty good, and the next day, yeah, this completely opposite one sounds pretty good, and I'm wondering if I'm the only one that does that.
So can I say you seem to be subjectively choosing an objective morality?
Well, I mean, here's the problem. I know you're kidding on that, but I get that. But you can reduce everything down to subjective reductionism, and I don't think that's really a good way to go about doing it. I know Cosmic Skeptic does that, right? He'll
How
basically
about
say everything reduces down to subjective states. But that's not what we mean by objectivity or objectivism in philosophy. Objectivist just means that there are some moral absolutes or moral positions that are objectively true regardless of individual or cultural belief. And I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. If somebody says, well, do you think it's always wrong to do something? Yes, there are sometimes I think it's always wrong to do something. Is it wrong to splash acid in a woman's face because she, has a different ideological position? Yes, I always think that's wrong, right? But then that goes against my moral theory, my error theory, right? So it sucks.
No, and I think, well, one, this conversation goes above my pay grade because and I saw the whole thing with Cosmic Skeptic, and I just was like, I am not commenting on this lest I just dig myself my own hole. But this is something I see a lot of street preachers doing. Is I think a lot of people haven't analyzed their morals and where they come from, and you've done a very deep analysis of yours as you're doing constantly here.
I'm always updating mine. That's the problem.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in society just think wrong is wrong, and that was kind of something we had going in the GDCs, that wrong is wrong, but what is wrong? So I think that's the problem.
Well, yeah, because here's the thing. Like, look, people can define good in terms of privation, which would be the absence, or evil would be the privation of good, so the absence of good. But wrongness or evil and rightness, that's a very different ballgame of what we determine to be right. And and again, I think that I'm more concerned about what a person does rather than if they think that a proposition is truth apt when it comes to morals, right? I don't think that really matters in the big picture. If you think that a moral proposition expresses a belief, great. If you don't, okay, that's great too. I want to know normatively what you are going to do in a situation if you have morals, right? Do you think it's moral not to go out and kill somebody? Do you think it's moral not to date rape? That's what I'm concerned about, right? Because metaethics doesn't tell you any of that. It doesn't tell you how to do things normatively.
No, I think that's the issue. And I really wish that we would teach these things to children. I wish we would teach morality, philosophy, and also logic to children growing up, because it just teaches you how to think and has you analyze yourself and come to deeper understandings. A lot of people from any background just kind of get into their rut and continue on the path they were started on.
Oh, I totally agree. And matter of fact, one of the things that in these Facebook groups, how this actually, I can almost taste it. This palatable hatred for philosophy that they have, and it's bizarre because I mean, like promoting science, and you're trying to explain to these idiots that without philosophy, science is a useless tool. What is it that guides science methodologically? It is philosophy. It is methodological naturalism, right? And so,
Yep.
if you get rid of any of these philosophical standards like methodological naturalism, then science could posit anything, right? And so they don't seem to understand that, and then they get into this weird notion of what's called verificationism, or even more specifically, logical positivism, where you think that nothing has cognitive meaning unless it could be proven somehow empirically, and that doesn't even make much sense. You don't prove things empirically. You can prove a syllogism or something, right? But I don't think it makes sense to make everything a case where I can't believe something unless it's proven to be true, because I don't know what that means to be proven to be true.
Can I rant on this? For
Yes.
I'd love to rant on this because
Please.
whenever someone says they've proven something, unless, like you said, like without syllogisms or mathematics, there is no proof. There's only in science evidence. So whenever we talk about evidence, it's just evidence creates the working theory, the scientific theory, which is just, everyone knows this probably in the group, is just our understanding of a natural phenomenon. But we never prove that we are correct. We just keep validating the theory. We just validate and continue to have evidence that confirms that we're on the right track with our understanding.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because there was a person in one of these groups that claimed to be a physics student, and he didn't seem to understand that theories are never proven, right?
Yes.
And this is basic first day stuff, right? And so I try to explain to him, think about it this way, because I go into these groups really trying to explain to people these things, and it might as well, I might as well try to be explaining differential equations to a cockroach, okay? But if very simply, if you prove a scientific theory, let's arguendo, assume that you can prove a scientific theory. Now, don't you see a big problem with that? Because you've now
Yeah.
done one of two things. One, you've eliminated any falsification criteria. Not a good thing for a theory, right? Because you want to be able to falsify it. And two, Ryan, what happens in mathematics once you prove something?
Well, then you close the door on it.
You're done. Game
Yeah.
over. You can
Yeah.
never disprove something that's proven. So when I see a meme that says you can't disprove something that hasn't been proven, you're an idiot because that's not
Oh,
how it works.
I thought there was no proof in science, though.
Exactly. That's the reason.
Yeah.
Oh,
With evidence.
You can't disprove something that's been proven. You can disprove something that has not been proven, but once it's been proven, the door is shut on that, as he said. Right? I mean, and people will say, "Well, what happens if they found fault? If I found fault in the proof?" Well, in that case, you never proved it to begin with.
Well, Tom, I'll just to explain briefly here. In what we have in science, the p-value, or you can do a lot of different calculations, but p-value stands for probability, basically. And p-values are the probability of your results or results from our stream happening by random chance variation, usually given that the null is true. I've said that a few times, but the p-value is just a probabilistic outcome given the null. So if you receive a p-value of like zero point 0.8, it tells you your results or results from our stream were likely given the null is true. But if you receive a p-value below zero point 0.05, which is the general scientific statistically significant in the scientific community, you would say your results were unlikely by random chance, and you have an alternative, and it could be related to the mean, the proportion, or the standard deviation, or any sort of quantity that you are measuring about this characteristic. And then you create the theory, and the theory is just a working understanding. The math is the evidence, oftentimes in science, where the theory is the working understanding. We never prove a theory, we just have math that works with the theory.
So do you cringe when somebody says, "Well, in science, once you prove the hypothesis, it becomes a theory"? Does that just like not drive you nuts?
Oh no! When everyone says I prove the null or prove the alternative, or accept, I don't like the word accept. Some people say accept. I just say reject, do not reject, because if you do not reject, and this is going for classical frequentist approach, not Bayesian or information theory, but if you go for the classic approach, I prefer to say reject and do not reject, because when you think about the complement of reject, it would be do not reject. It's like if someone tells you something, you can either reject what they say or not reject it. You don't have to accept it.
Well, there's two things that involved here, and this is probably going to get a little more in depth,
Sure.
but there's two things. So one, um, I don't mind saying if you reject the null hypothesis, you can accept the claim. I've had some people say that's fine, some people
Yeah.
that don't like that. Personally, I don't think it's a big deal. If you can correctly reject the null, so you don't have a type 1 or type 2 error, then it's okay. You can say, you know what, my claim, my hypothesis is more likely the case. I accept that to be the case. That's what you're basically saying. It's more likely the case that your hypothesis is correct over the null hypothesis. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I have a rebuttal. Keep going if you have more, because
Okay.
I think I can convince you to use my wording.
Okay, okay. Um, but when it comes to that word reject, right? There's a colloquial version of the word reject, and there's a classical propositional meaning for that word reject. So when you say, for example, let's say you have a job interview, and or somebody has a job interview with you, and they give you their resume, their CV, and you don't hire them. Okay.
Hmm.
You say, well, I've been rejected, right? They did not accept my job application, right? That's a
Hmm.
colloquial term for rejection. But when you say you reject a proposition, it means to assert the negation, right? So what happens is if P is equal true and I say I reject that, I'm asserting P is equal to false because it's defined as R row is defined to be not A row, and I've actually looked at that and found it actually defined in a classical logic book. So that's how I use the word reject. So that's why when you say like atheism is the rejection of theism, it literally means the negation of the proposition or the belief that theism is false, meaning that it's the belief that what would be atheism would be true, or the position that gods don't exist would be true. That's how I use the word rejection because that's how it's actually used.
And I think I'm always good with, and I'm good with that rejection. I think my main problem is when people say they accept a value. because when you look at things like confidence intervals, a confidence interval gives a range of values that could be possibly true, like 95% confidence intervals.
Mhm.
And so technically anything inside of a 95% confidence interval cannot be rejected. If you put that to a test, you would not reject any of those values. So my argument is, if you make a confidence interval, you cannot accept any of those values. Now, you could use the language of, I'm willing to accept any of these values as the truth, but that's why I don't like anyone saying, I accept this value is the truth. It's almost like closing the door to me when someone says they accept it. It's just kind of a probable value that you would not reject, in my opinion.
Okay, I mean, I follow that. But what happens if you reject? What happens if you reject the you have a false positive, I guess, a type one error.
Okay.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you're basically saying instead of failing to reject the no, which is a type two, you actually reject the no incorrectly, right?
Correct. Rejection of a true null.
Rejection of a true null. So in that case, if you had a statistical significance, 95% confidence interval, and by the way, I get all those terms confused because I hate statistics, and I dumped that crap when it came to confidence intervals and mean value and chi t squared nova alpha whatever. Yeah,
You're messing me up. It's chi squared. You're messing me up.
I hate that crap, dude. Yeah, whatever.
Well, keep going, but there's so many cool stories, like William Gossett, who worked at Guinness Beer. He's the guy who made the tea distribution. I just imagine him drinking beer and doing statistics.
I couldn't imagine it. I couldn't imagine it. It's hard stuff.
But you were saying about the type one error.
Oh, I was just saying that. Are you saying that you have to accept it? You have to reject the null at that point if you're within that confidence interval.
Well, the thing is you really don't know when you've made a type one error. Type one error is associated with alpha, which is
your significant alpha.
It's associated with your alpha, your sample size, and your effect size. The three things are: effect size is the difference between the truth and the null. I like to use basketball examples for this, as in, imagine I'm playing my brother in basketball, and imagine I'm playing Michael Jordan in basketball. Where would it be easier to reject the null that we're both the same?
By the way, Lucifer makes a great point in the live chat. He says, we need to get people to understand the atheism is not the null. I could not agree with you more, dude. When I hear people say the atheism is the null, I know two things. I know they don't understand statistics and they don't understand science or atheism. So three things.
The null would be that no religion. It would be the lack of belief in anything.
Yeah, I mean, you might be able to make a case that agnosticism would be the null.
Yeah.
Maybe. Right? Maybe even then I have issues with that, but they're not as egregious. But to say that atheism is the null position or the default position, to me, is astronomically stupid.
And any decision requires evidence. So as soon as you give yourself a label, you kind of need evidence for that label.
Yeah, well, that's the problem I have with agnosticism, too. The thing with agnosticism, which, by the way, obviously I am, but agnosticism is not a position on the proposition. It is a second-order position. Meaning that I still have to explain why I don't believe P is true and why I don't believe P is false, right? I need a justificatory reason to say that I'm not justified to assign a truth value to that proposition. So agnosticism is a position, but it's not a position in relationship to the proposition. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah,
okay.
It definitely does.
Good, because a lot of people get confused on that, and I try to explain to them first and second order positions like that, and they just get lost, and they're like, no, either you believe or you don't believe. And I swear to God, every one of these atheists that I dealt with, except for maybe two, all they did was parrot the same mantras, the same base level crap that I've been dealing with for the last God knows how many years. They've learned nothing.
And I think that's why I really, once again, the GDC is because you can get in the mud. You can, maybe I've heard Matt Dillahunty say something or random other atheist X person, but you shouldn't parrot what they say. You should come to your own view and kind of amalgamate the other views. So,
let me ask you, how many people you ever see running their own arguments? Besides, I mean, I do all the time, right? You see me posting my own arguments because I'm not afraid for somebody to go, that's a shit argument, or that's actually pretty good. I like to test them out, right? Poke holes in it. That's what you're supposed to do. But other than myself, negation of P, and maybe a very handful of other people, most people don't run their own arguments. They just parrot what they hear. Now, I'm not against that. But for the people that don't want to even put themselves out there to try to come up with a new argument, they shouldn't really be criticizing other people who try.
Well, yeah, and well, it's hard, and I mean, I think everyone should be criticized. I think, but the thing is, if they just parrot some random statement back to you or start using quotes, it's easy to slap that down. But no, I think everyone should be criticized. But it's kind of sad when people don't have good criticism.
Oh, it's wretched. For example, I mean, if I just sit there and say, well, atheism is this. Well, atheism is that. Well, no, that's not what it's used this way. Well, that doesn't matter because I use it this way. Okay, use it that way. But that doesn't change the fact I'm telling you how it's used over here.
Yeah, I think we're about to start some big fights talking about what atheism is. That's kind of the hot button topic.
No, most people. I think most people kind of actually agree nowadays. I think that that whole
Yeah.
thing has died out because there's just overwhelming evidence that it's just not the way they think it is. But except you go to Facebook groups, right? But it's not just that; it's a whole bunch of topics they get wrong. I like that one guy that I told you that was into science. I mean, it was that physics guy. He didn't. He said, "Well, no, no, no. Laws have been proven." And I
God.
go. Do you understand humans' problem of induction? Do you understand that we have no way of knowing the uniformity of nature? And I sound like Darwin's deity there for a little while, right? But I mean, even Darwin's deity got some things right, but he didn't understand that. He didn't understand no black swans. And it's just like, you're going to be a scientist. You need to learn some philosophy. Well, no, philosophy is useless. I'm like, then you're not going to be a good scientist, man.
Yeah.
He was freshman, I
No.
think, if that. And he had a book of logic as an avatar. I'm like, oh, that's apropos. I was like, you have a book of logic, and you're telling me he actually said something like modus ponens is invalid, and I was like,
What?
what? It's bizarre. No, I'm serious. Go if you guys want to have some fun. Seriously, go to these atheist versus theist groups on Facebook. I'll even invite you. Just send me who you are, and ask them what a logical argument is. Ask them what a valid logical argument is. So if I said, Brian, if I said this, if the moon is made of green cheese, then I'm a moose. The moon is made of green cheese. Therefore, I am a moose. Would you say that is not a perfectly valid structure? P therefore or implies Q. P therefore Q. What is invalid about that?
It is perfectly valid, but it is not sound. Am I
Yeah, it's not
correct?
sound at all. It's
Boom.
completely not sound, but it is
I did
valid.
like low level logic.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that in its validity, right? The validity goes to structure. It doesn't go to the truthfulness of the propositions. All the validity means that if the propositions are true, then the conclusion has to follow. That's all that it means. The
So you're telling
soundness
me
means,
that the moon is not made of green cheese?
not that yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not.
Oh shit! Wow, damn. Damn.
Yeah,
Guess gotta rethink some things.
but the soundness goes that the premises are true, right? And I mean, I had a logical argument about naturalism, and it's actually a derivative of Dr. Graham Opie. But the argument is really simple. I'm not going to get into the technical stuff of it, but basically it boils down to this: is if you accept ontological or philosophical naturalism, you are at the same time asserting that there are no gods. Now think about that carefully. That has to be the truth by entailment.
Okay.
Because if you accept philosophical naturalism, not methodological, but philosophical naturalism,
Yeah, that makes sense.
you are discounting all supernatural causations and beings. If God is posited as a supernatural being, you're at the same time you're a hard atheist, right? You're saying there are no gods. Now, if some idiot can come along and say, well, natural gods. You know what? You're an idiot. Don't even get in my face about that because it's so not. That's like G-man level bullshit. Because I'll ask somebody, Brian, okay, you want to posit natural gods. I have two apples. One's a natural god, the other one's not. Tell me the differences. Crickets.
Well, one's a god. They told you.
By fiat, right?
Yes.
So by name only, it's a god with no distinguishable properties, right?
Yeah.
There happens to be something called the law of indistinguishability, which means that if two objects have the exact same properties, they are the same object. And so if you can't tell me that there's any different properties between two different objects, they're the same actually. So I would like to know the difference between if you have one apple that's non-god or god, tell me how to distinguish between the two. Else there is no differentiation. It's as simple as that. Never go full G-man, exactly.
I really hope. I don't know. I had lots of hope for G-Man. He seemed to turn around, and I think it was the pendulum just swinging, and it just swung back hard the other way.
I tried, dude. I tried to help him out. I know Hogtie did. I know a lot of people tried to go out of their way to help him out. He didn't want it. He didn't want it. He's just so fixated in the old school ways that he didn't want to move ahead, and that's just his deal. I haven't talked to him this year, nor do I intend to.
I think, and seeing a lot of, I know he's got preaching to the choir ministry. I don't know how big that is.
Not very.
Not very.
He doesn't see he doesn't really see the irony of that. It's not the correct word, irony, but I'm going to use it inappropriately here. He doesn't see the problem with preaching to the choir thing.
Yeah, I guess, I think a lot of people see the fame that religion or being at the center of a movement can be and want that. I don't know. I do not know. I think it's a psychological thing.
Possibly. But I mean, but anyways, so you got the argument that if you accept naturalism, you have to be a strong atheist. It's just they don't
makes sense.
Yeah, you can't be a weak atheist because you're just saying at that point, well, I believe no God, I believe there's no thing supernatural, but you know what? I have no position on gods. Well, that's not a coherent position. That's an inconsistent position.
Yeah.
So I made a logical proof with that, and people balked at it. Except for not everybody did. Some people were like, yeah, that actually is legit, but. So I decided to turn around, Brian. I said, well, you know what? How about you guys try to design the argument? Try to make an argument out of this. One person did. His name was Cam. And he happens to be friends with Dr. Alex Malpass, right? And he made a really good, he made the same pretty much exact argument that I did, just a little bit more formalized. And I'm like, that's pretty good. That's actually spot on. There's nothing wrong with that, I can see. And he's like, yeah, it's not that hard. He's like, you're right. If you accept proposition, philosophical naturalism, you have to be a strong atheist. And and yet people were balking at that still. They're like, you're just playing word games. I'm like, no, this is not word games. This is not just semantics. This is actually, how philosophy works. This is how logic works. But they want to make it down. I've noticed this, and I'm getting a little buzzed here, but I noticed this. If people don't understand the argument, Brian, they throw out things like, oh, that's just semantics. Or, oh, that's a fallacy, and then they'll just throw some fallacy out there like they know what the hell they're talking about. Or you're talking word salad.
Or when you're talking to Bible people, street preachers, I should say, they'll say, oh, you took it out of context.
Oh, your exegesis sucks.
Or,
hey, Wonton, exegete right, dude.
Ecstasy? Did you say ecstasy?
Exegete.
Wonton, you're tons of fun tonight.
Wonton, you drinking? It is Rum and Coke night.
I should grab a drink and join you guys.
Yeah.
Where are you from, Wonton? I'm not like city, state, but north.
He's trying
south.
to dox you.
Northeast.
Northeast. Okay, that's all I need to know. That's all I care about. Yeah, I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah.
You know how many people for the longest time thought Wonton was Ronnie? And I couldn't convince them otherwise. They're like, no, that's Ronnie. I'm like, dude, that's not, I've seen him. He's not Ronnie.
I've actually seen that Ronnie video. I was like, wow, I guess, they'll kind of...
But they didn't believe it. They're like, no, Steve, that is Ronnie. He's fucking with you. I'm like, you don't understand. I've seen what Wonton looks like. He's not Ronnie. Oh, Lord.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Well, I'm doing great. I mean, like I said, I've just been venting because I've been just slumming on Facebook. It's just been... you try to go out of your way to help people, and all they do is spit on you. It's ridiculous. Now, yes, I'm an arrogant prick. Don't get me wrong on Facebook. I'm not going to lie. I'm definitely arrogant to these people because they're so goddamn stupid. But I do the same thing to flat earthers and young earth creationists sometimes, so whatever. They're just atheist versions of creationists to me.
What happened to, why are you in Twitter jail?
Well, I've got 2 more days, dude.
No. Womp womp.
I know, right? But it was so worth it. The takedown of Andrew was epic. Did you watch that?
I watched it. Has he responded yet at all?
Yeah, he responded by blocking everybody. He blocked me, he blocked Kyle, he blocked Katie. Now, you got to admit, that was a glorious takedown, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think you guys went over... He was talking about the red blood cells, which are not red blood cells. And I can't remember what she was saying in the call that you guys played, but he just kept getting everything wrong. And maybe I think you interspliced the Apologia video where he just shows that they're mispronouncing her name, they're getting the science wrong, they don't know what they're talking about. They call it blue. They call blue dwarfs blue something else.
Well, there's blue giants, but they call them blue stars, and then they say that that scientists posited the Oort cloud for it.
And doesn't he say like you don't know what blue stars are? And it's like they're not called that. It's like you're getting it wrong yourself. It was nonsense to me. Yeah, it was sad. Like, and I thought the video was great.
Zero says, I slightly disagree with you. I'm both a naturalist and arguably a strong atheist. Yeah, that's the point. If you're a naturalist, you have to be a strong atheist. That's the argument. You can't be a weak atheist if you're a naturalist. That is an inconsistent logical system. But again, I try to explain that to people on Facebook, and they're like, oh, you're just equating atheism with naturalism. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like, it's an entailment, you dumb motherfuckers. I get cranky. I get cranky after a while. I admit that because I just deal with such a level of incompetence. I mean, why do does anybody go out and bother to learn anything if all somebody has to do is say you're just speaking word salad?
No, I know exactly what you're saying because it's like you lay down a really good argument, you explain your points, and then someone just balks at it. They just look at it and say, eh.
I had one person literally say that, and he's like, "No, I didn't read it because it was too wordy." Then how do you know it's a bad argument? Because I posted on the GDC, and yeah, we tweaked it a little bit, and that's one of the reasons I love posting it on the GDC because people will poke holes at it, and I'll evaluate them as is. I'll be like, okay, that's a good. No, that's not so good, right? But at least they try, right? I love that. That's why I post the arguments there to begin with, and after a while, I noticed people stop poking the holes because you patch them up, and they're like, oh, at that point, I think it's pretty sound, right? I think it's pretty good. Then you have a strong argument. So I'll take that and I'll go to Facebook and I'll post it on there. They don't even try to poke holes in it. It's just silly.
Wotan, have you ever debated a controversial topic and maybe used a debate tactic to get someone's ire going? Or what are your thoughts on...
Oh, never would Wotan do that. What are you kidding? That's how
debate tactics?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come off so loaded, but...
No.
It was pretty loaded.
I mean, I don't even know any debate tactics. I just go in with what I think of the world, and if somebody refutes it, then you refute it. That's fine.
Yeah, and I think I like hearing you debate. I like every show I've seen with you on. I know. I think you're pretty open, and I think you will respond to people. I don't always agree with your responses, but
Wotan's only issue is he doesn't learn from his prior mistakes.
Which are?
Well, everything you've ever said about science. I mean, it is something to be said, though. I mean, again, there's certain facts of life, right? And when you go into these discussions, I don't like starting at the very basics every single time, right? And I'm not saying that with you all the time, but I'm just saying in general. And I feel like when I go to these Facebook groups, I'm starting from ring zero, right, or rung zero. I'm like bottom of the barrel ladder. I'm having to work my way up, and it just I can't do it anymore. It just drives me nuts because I'm used to a higher level of competent people that I know when I put my argument on the GDC, I'm going to have smart motherfuckers trying to poke holes of it, and they do a great job.
Well, the one argument that I've been corrected on that I no longer use anymore was the null hypothesis and stuff like that. I've now understood that the null hypothesis is not what my presumption what the null hypothesis
thank
was.
God. So you understand that
I am.
Then you never accept the null hypothesis. You never prove the null hypothesis. You only
right. That was the part that I was confused.
You only try to reject it. Right. And that's funny you say that, Wotan, and I'm glad that you've corrected that. Thank you. But what do you think when atheists say that atheism is the null hypothesis? It makes wait a minute. Then you can't ever be an atheist because you don't accept the null hypothesis. You only reject it.
It's one of the reasons why I'm no longer an atheist.
But isn't that weird when atheists say, "Oh, atheism is the null"? Brian, I mean, does that even make sense?
I think I like what you just said. If atheism is the null, then you can never accept atheism. I think atheism is just an alternative that you adopt when you kind of. There was the definition of atheism I really liked. I'm going to butcher it if I try to do it. But basically, as a thinking being, you come to the conclusion that there is not enough evidence to believe in a god or gods, and that's how I kind of think of atheism.
Yeah, it's called. I think it's there's different terms for the evidential atheism. There's functional atheism. in the long run, it still boils down to agnostic.
Yeah. And I think someone has to make a decision, and that decision has to be evidence based. So the null would really be kind of how we are as a baby, where we don't even know what these things are. We have not made a choice on it. And when we eventually do make a choice, then we have a belief structure, and that belief structure is hopefully based on evidence, and all the choices are all the alternatives, and the null is kind of nothing.
I like the way Opie puts it. He would put a baby in those things that's called innocence,
Yeah.
because they've never evaluated it. See, the thing with agnosticism, if you go read some of the literature, like Dr. Feidman, she's a PhD from New York State University, and she wrote a paper, actually two, on suspending of judgment. And as she notes, that in order to suspend judgment, you have to try to evaluate the proposition, right? You can't suspend some judgment on something you've never heard of before. Right? So a baby cannot be agnostic because they've never even tried to evaluate the proposition. So he has atheist, agnostic, theist, and innocent. And I think that's actually a good structure to have. I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
So basically, you can be agnostic, non-agnostic, you can be agnostic, gnostic, or I guess innocent is kind of both for like the inability to evaluate a proposition, right?
Right, but I wouldn't call it Gnostic. You don't have Gnostic. Gnostic refers to Gnosticism, right? Which was about second century form of Jewish mysticism, where they thought they had a direct line to God. Some of them actually thought it was Jesus, but Gnosticism and Agnosticism, even though they sound alike and they have a similar root, they are not the same word. Agnosticism came from Thomas Henry Huxley when he was at a party, and he didn't want to be associated with these people in the party who thought they had some divine knowledge that he thought they were not justified to have.
Oh.
That's when he coined the term agnosticism. And what he meant by that is, which is different than how it's used typically now, but he thought that the way he taught agnosticism is that he thought theist, and he thought atheist in the philosophical sense. Neither of them had enough information to properly justify their belief. Right? So if you take, that's the more strict version of it, but the soft atheism is more the position that you just are not justified to assign a truth value either way. Right? So I can say that I don't accept that theism is true, and I don't accept atheism is true. Now, somebody earlier today said, well, Steve, if you have to be atheist or theist, and I'm trying to explain to them, no, that's not how it works. And of course, I'm being berated for it. And I'm like, you do not have a deep understanding of this topic. You just simply don't. If you think something has to be one or the other, you do not understand the topic. It's simple as that. You're just parroting what you've heard off some Matt Dillahunty video. And by the way, Matt gets the stuff right, but people still get him taken out of context. But
no, I think you would say you have to be an atheist or not an atheist. You have to be a theist or not a theist. But we haven't shown yet that atheist and theist are dichotomous.
Correct. The way it works is this. Somebody says, Rayleigh says, is soft atheism is not agnosticism? Yeah. No, soft atheism is agnosticism. They're the same logical position. Right? I can actually prove that using logic. So they are the same position, or non-position, as the case may be on P. But the dichotomist, atheism and theism is not a dichotomy. They're called contradictories, or contradictories. And what that means is basically there's contraries and there's contradictories. And the difference is that when you have a contradictory, if one is true, the other one has to be false. So neither can be true at the same time. So if theism is true, atheism is the negation or the contradiction. That has to be false. Right?
Agreed.
Okay, and vice versa, right? If atheism is true, and I mean in the philosophical sense, then theism can't be true. However, you have what's also known as contraries, and contraries are a little bit different. They can actually be, they can be false at the same time. They can't be true at the same time, but they can be false at the same time.
Agreed.
Yeah, so that's a little bit different there. But so when people say, well, you have to be one or the other, and I've tried to explain to them, beliefs are not dichotomous. I can believe P is true. I can believe P is false. I can believe P is not a proposition to begin with. I can believe that I don't give a shit one way or another about P. Right? I can believe a lot of different things about P. That sounds weird. but beliefs are not a dichotomy for that very reason. We don't want to have beliefs as a dichotomy. And people will say, well, either I believe or I don't believe. Well, in classical logic, that's true. In multivariate logic, that's not. But in classical logic, that's true. But they assume that if you don't believe, you have to be an atheist. And that is just a fundamental mistake they make by watching these stupid fucking videos on YouTube rather than going to read the actual books on the topic. It's very annoying.
I think the non sequitur show has shown to us all that you can believe a lot of things about P.
We yeah, it's therapeutic.
Allegedly,
right?
Dave.
Yeah.
Oh God. Hey, Milwaukee atheist, get your happy ass in here. There, I'll give you the link. Yeah, I'm talking about my experiences on Facebook. Again, I'm slumming. I don't do it often. I don't like going on Facebook. I'm not a big fan of Facebook. People message me on Facebook and I don't even respond half the time because I'm constantly logging in and out of it. I don't like it. My camera doesn't work for it, so you can't even call me. It doesn't update. I have to actually physically refresh my window in order to update on Facebook, and I hate doing that. Right? I don't get any notifications. I don't even get an instant message unless I refresh. And so I just don't like Facebook for that. And I don't know why that is. Hey, Zero.
Hey,
No.
kind of Johann Ratz. Have you ever heard about this fucker?
Johann Ratz. I know a Ratz, but his name's not Johann.
Yeah, he's on YouTube, and he calls himself a naturalistic theist. He basically takes a position that there isn't like something supernatural. There's not like some. I don't know. I still don't even know what the fuck.
Well, there is something called natural theology, but natural theology is based upon the fact that your person is justified to believe there's a God just based upon sensory experience.
No, I'm saying like he calls himself a naturalist specifically and is also a theist. He doesn't really talk about like he doesn't put the two words together.
That seems like a contradiction to me.
What's the contradiction in saying that gods are naturalistic entities rather than just like...
There's twofold way of looking at this. Okay? One of the ways of looking at this is that if you assume all there is natural, then anything in reality would be considered to be natural. If gods exist, they exist somehow ontologically in some kind of reality, right? In which case, the person would say, well, then they're part of reality and they're natural. I don't think that's an effective way to establish a difference or demarcational line between naturalism and supernaturalism. Okay? I mean, what's the point? If you just say everything's natural, that's fine. But at that point, I think you should eliminate any kind of supernatural causation. You can't just say that at that point all supernatural
there is
stuff
a
is
difference,
natural.
Because if something is naturalistic, even if it's apparently magical, the way we think about it now, then you're still saying that it's something that's subject to scientific inquiry. Like, it's possible to test something's properties, even if it's not what we would traditionally consider natural. And I kind of think that's his position.
I don't know how much that makes sense, though. Hang on one second.
I don't know. To me, it makes more sense than, like, I don't even understand. Nobody's ever even explained what supernatural means. It seems like it's just a catch-all term for shit that you can't say anything meaningful about.
No, I mean, I think there's ways we could probably come up with a working definition of supernatural. I think, again, it's a difficult thing to do, and I don't like doing it. I let somebody else define that. But, Lawrence, you have to... I don't know why you can't hear anything. Hello? Nobody's on camera, so... Poor Lawrence can't hear anything. He can't even see anything. Can somebody go on camera and... Hey, Chum. Who's Chum? Do I know Chum?
Yeah, I'm Lance. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, man.
Okay. So anyways, when it comes to this, like, natural stuff, let's assume you posit a natural deity. I have a guy today say that Zeus is a natural god. And I'm like, well, that kind of makes no sense to me, right? He's able to prescriptively change the laws of nature. I personally have a working stipulative definition of gods such that it's completely different than the way Aaron does. Aaron talks about some anthropomorphic, being, right? But I just say that, look, if you can prescriptively change the laws of physics, I'm okay for conversational purposes to calling that a deity.
So wait, wouldn't that make like something like string theory, or generally, I guess, any grand unified theory, wouldn't that make that sort of a deity in that sense?
No, because you're not changing the way it works. You're just observing. You're just modeling.
No,
it.
you're changing the way it works, because there's different vacuum states that do basically exhibit different laws of physics, at least that you would observe and be able to.
I don't believe in the consciousness collapse model.
I don't either. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, generally, the concept that physical laws can have different expressions isn't necessarily something that's divorced from scientific inquiry.
Oh, sure, but that's not the same thing by saying, hey, Zero, go change the speed of light to be this value.
All right, but if I could, that wouldn't necessarily mean that I'm operating beyond the natural world. It would just mean that the natural world included the possibility of some random jackass on the internet being able to...
And I'm okay with that. But again, these are working stipulative definitions, right? That's why, to me, if Lawrence can magically say, by spewing a word, that the speed of light now is going to be half its value, I'm going to be like, damn, that dude is got power. That dude has supernatural power. I don't know how it works.
I think I can do that.
Lawrence, do it. Don't do it. You will break electronics.
I have another one of these beers. I'll be able to do that. So these things are potent as fuck, man.
You know what? Oh, speaking of, I should go get some alcohol. But you know what I think I should do? I should change it to the speed of light that the creationist model, the young Earth creationist model, should have it at for anything to make sense.
Do you know how high it has to be?
Incredibly high. I watched a Crocoduck video on it.
Oh, and he's
Not
right
necessarily.
too. Well, I know Crocoduck's math on this. I've actually talked to him about this very thing. If the creationist was right, Hubble's constant would be ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Millions of times greater than it actually is.
Yeah, I'm not a mathematician, so I couldn't know the right answer, like the right exact answer. But like in concept, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you don't have to be a mathematician. All you have to know is this. Look, very simple. Things are related to each other in physics. They're called natural units. Right. So the speed of light, g, Planck's length, all these things are intricately related. Planck time. There is a fundamental relationship to them all. Matter of fact, you can use what's called quantitative analysis, and you could derive some of these from other things, believe it or not, just by the units that they use, right? Is unit analysis. It's very interesting. It uses matrix theory, but it can be done. I've done it once. But if you change one thing, for example, if I change the value of C, there's two major constants that are out there that have to do with atoms, and one's called the permittivity and the other's called permissivity, and they're basically based on free space. Long story short, one's dealing with electric, one's dealing with magnetic, but if they change, you cannot have atoms form, because you cannot have even things that would be in the structure of an atom. The electrons would not be in the shapes that they are for their orbitals around the nucleus of the atom if those fundamental constants change. And the problem is if C changes, guess what happens? Those fundamental constants change as well, because there's a relationship between them. C is equal to the square root, I believe, of C equals to 1 over the square root of electromagnetic constants. Is that what it is? Somebody? I'm not going to look it up. But yeah, I think that's what it is. So
yeah, I couldn't tell you.
So you don't want to change these things, right? You just don't want to mess with the constants too much, and that's why people get the fine structure constant argument or the fine tuning argument, right?
Fine tuning. It's like if you were born into a different universe, you'd be calling that fine tuning.
Yes. Oh, I'm a big fan of the puddle argument.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Very good one. And people say, well, that's not really. I've heard theists go, well, that's not really a good argument. I'm like, can you explain to me why? Well, how is that not a good argument?
Puddles, we're people. Puddles to people, Steve. This is evolution to you.
That's evolution. That's evolution. Puddles to people. You believe you came from a warm puddle of pee. No.
This is what Darwinists believe.
Goddamn Darwinists.
No, but there's actually a really interesting potential alternative for the starlight problem that I'm actually I'm glad I learned about.
What's that?
Jason Lyle had this stupid idea. He's like, well,
asynchronous light theory.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's actually completely consistent with physics, and it's actually interesting to just think about because there's not really a good way to boil relativity into something that's easily reconcilable with how we think about the world.
He's not wrong. Let's put it that way.
That just fucks with it so much more.
Yeah, he's not like he's fundamentally wrong. The asynchronous light model could work, but it still requires a lot of assumptions.
And it would mean that we're the center of the universe. Like the particle horizon would suddenly have to be a real thing.
Yeah, and I don't believe that.
Yeah, it doesn't make any damn sense. But I still like that I learned it because it's actually interesting to think about.
But it shows they're trying, right?
Yeah, I mean, kinda.
But the other model was called the variable speed of light model, and one of the reasons, I mean, you obviously looked into this stuff. You've heard of the horizon problem, right? The cosmic horizon problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Andrew tried talking about that, and Rapport and it's just like he didn't understand it. But long story short, if you have two different portions of the sky, 180 degrees opposite each other, there's no reason why they should be at both thermal equilibrium and so same constants because they've never been in causal contact with each other. So there has to be an explanation of how they were ever in the same space, knowing they're so far away, and that's where they came up with inflation theory. The other model posited was the variable
No,
speed of light.
inflation actually. Sorry, never mind.
No, inflation theory does resolve that, but believe me.
It does, but inflation actually was come up with because, like, Alan Guth was just trying to figure out how to work with grand unified theories, and he was working on the monopole problem. So his main focus wasn't even that. He just kind of discovered that there could be, like, in the unification epoch, there'd be this state of like a negative pressure with no energy density,
That's
and that would actually cause expand. Like that would basically be repulsive gravity.
Yeah, the monopole problem I still don't think has been fully solved. Now here's the thing. Now, if there was primordial monopoles, they would have long decayed by now. They would have been gone. But the model predicts there should be monopoles. But why don't we have any?
I don't actually know about the primordial monopole decay thing. I don't know. I'd never heard that.
I literally
before.
just did a presentation on.
I heard you mention it. I just don't know. I hadn't heard about it before then.
You didn't hear about monopole theory? Oh.
No. I knew about monopoles. I knew what the monopole problem was. The primordial monopoles, I had actually thought the specific problem with them was that they wouldn't have decayed and that we would expect to potentially observe them. So the reason that supposedly that cleared up the monopole problem is that they would have just been so damn far apart that you'd never expect to actually run into one.
You mean like low density?
What?
The density would have been so low of them.
Yeah, like effectively zero. You'd never find one.
Yeah,
I'm
not quite sure
about monopole decay. I need to look into that. I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they would have decayed because we've actually modeled what monopole decay would actually look like, and we found there's been a recent paper that I was reading that they've actually found a decay mode monopole, but they obviously can't confirm that was actually a monopole. But we know what it would look like, and I'm not sure if it came muon, bion, whatever. But they say things like with the Higgs, right? They're like, okay, here's this boson. What would we expect the decay products to be? That's what they look for. They don't actually discover the actual particle. They discover what the model would predict the decay particles would be. Like even with the basic beta decay, we know what we would expect as far as the neutrino and the electron. We know what energy levels it should be exactly. So when we see, a neutron turn into a proton, we know that electron and antineutrino has been produced, and specifically an anti-electron neutrino. But before, we didn't know that. We didn't know neutrinos even existed, right? We just knew that something had to carry away that extra energy.
It's still weird that neutrinos have mass, but I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things because when I grew up and I was reading a little bit about particle physics, they didn't have mass.
Yeah, they were like they weren't predicted to have mass in the standard model as it was initially formulated. They kind of just were like, oh, well, they do have mass, so let's just nudge this in there.
It has to be so low, though.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I used to do a video series on neutrino mass implications, and honestly, I didn't get very far. It was an idea that I tried. I did like 2 episodes, and I just kind of fell out of it. But there was I don't know. I think I covered some neat stuff.
I like that kind of stuff. I mean, it's very superficial.
Yeah.
But I think that's all you really need to be. I don't think there's really any reason for like myself to really get any detailed understanding of some of that stuff because I'm just not in that field.
Dude, no, it's fun if you just read
at that point in time.
If you read shit on like the archive, it's fun to just see like, oh, this is like a current new idea, and to kind of vaguely understand what it means. It's fun. I don't know. I like it.
Oh no, I think that's great. I really do. But I mean, like when I did my presentation with Landon on the no boundary proposal by Stephen Hawking, I didn't have to really get that in depth into it, but I wanted to give at least a basic understanding to people where was people are like, well, this particular thing actually describes prior to the Big Bang, and I'm like, well, no, it really doesn't. It's a
I got a little beef though with that because
Bring it.
the no boundary proposal still is a proposal. It's not like it's a definitive truth. Like that's
I
even
totally
true.
agree. But the problem I have with the no boundary proposal is not that it's a bad idea, but it takes two big assumptions. One, it uses a Neo-Lorentzian model rather than Minkowski space, okay, which I don't have a big deal with, but we normally model space-time with Minkowski space, and all that really means to the people that are outside is that, think about it this way, space-time is four-dimensional, right, 4D. We think of space-time as intricately related with each other. That would be the Minkowski version. Neo-Lorentzian is pretty simple. It's basically 3 spatial dimensions and 1 temporal dimension, 3D plus 1T. Okay, that's all it really means. And the reason they do the Neo-Lorentzian model in the no boundary proposal is because they want to be able to have negative time, because it makes the math work a little bit better. You can actually suss it out, and you can get down to t equals 0. You still can't get prior to t equals 0, though, and that's when you say the before the Big Bang has no meaning, because even with Hawking's no boundary proposal, you can't get less than t equals 0.
But
Yeah, it's like asking what's north of the North Pole.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the reasons. That's actually one of the things that they use in analogies. Or my example is
I hear that and I get mad.
My favorite thing is, hey, Lawrence, point to me where I is on the real number line. Right? It's that nonsensical. Right? So,
See, and that makes sense.
I mean,
for
if
the
there was a
boundary
beginning,
proposal, but there are
there
other
was a beginning, there was a before, isn't it?
no.
No.
Yeah, no. In the no boundary proposal, there isn't really a before. It's
Right.
there's it's just not a past boundary. It's weird. It involves imaginary time, and it's hard to think about.
Exactly. It involves imaginary
Right, so it's
time.
just literally just people just pondering, and there's absolutely not a shred of evidence whatsoever, right?
Well, no,
Well,
the evidence is mathematics.
Like there's evidence in math; they can mathematically model this stuff. It's a proposal that's consistent with observational evidence. It's just not
Observational evidence before the Big Bang.
No. There's no such thing.
Oh no, okay. Observational evidence. All right, we definitively have stuff up to recombination, right? There are possibilities that we could find hints of stuff that happened before, like if we found polarization in the cosmic microwave background radiation, that would tell us that there were primordial gravitational waves, because basically it compressed a portion of space, at that moment that the light was last released, and then photons are basically
We
there
look
would be.
we look for anisotropes in the CMB. Is what we're trying to do. We try to find out. We want to see if there's a homologous universe. We want to see if everything is some kind of how do I put this? As he put it, if we see the result of the CMB having some kind of polarity, then we can actually say that early on there was some kind of gravitational force that caused that, because the initial changes early on in the Big Bang will have large-scale changes nowadays because of the time element has been evolved. So we can actually see those things, because the cosmic microwave background radiation is not consistent. There is variations in it, and that we need to explain those what's called anisotropes.
Well, I think the polarization is different than.
I only believe in micro expansion, not macro expansion, Steve.
Just a matter of time.
That's actually people. It's really weird to me that most people accept inflation, like most cosmologists accept inflation, but they don't like the idea of the multiverse. Like one is a prediction of the other. It's kind of hard to.
Well, same thing with no boundary. That actually is in the multiverse.
Does no boundary predict the multiverse?
Yeah, it does actually. It actually, if you look at the formula they use, it actually predicts it. And the formula is massive. It's a weird formula. I don't understand it.
Yeah, like there are other. I don't know. Conformal cyclic cosmology is really interesting to me just because it's so weird.
Like, I think it's
sounds like a lot of woo.
No, it's cyclic. I mean, the universe could be cyclic. I don't have a problem with that. But again, these are all mathematical models. So even when you're using no boundary proposal, we know certain things about the reality world time. We know that if we want to get from point A to point B, we can use a distance formula, right? We understand how distance formula works. That same distance formula, using spatial coordinates, x, y, z, and time, when you do a displacement, a d squared, you end up with x squared plus y squared plus x squared plus y squared plus z squared minus t squared. And what Hawking tried to do, and he does it fine, there's nothing wrong with this, he times the minus t squared by an imaginary number, which will give you d squared equals x squared plus y squared plus z squared plus t squared. Now you're dealing with imaginary time, and now you can actually model the system down to t equals 0. There's nothing wrong with that, but these are all mathematical ways of doing things, much like various types of summations, Wotan. If I want to say I want an analytical continuation summation of something like 1 plus 2 equals, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, you've seen it before where it says, well, this equals negative 1/12, right? Have you seen that? With a Majodan summation? There's a reason for these things with these types of analytical continuations and these types of tricks that they use. But there's nothing wrong with math. I mean, you can't just say math is wrong or math is not evidence. Of course it is.
But you can say that that's not a normal infinite sum. Like, that's not like using the normal rules.
That's why they call it analytical continuation, right?
I know.
Or
But they didn't call it that in the number file video, and I'm still mad.
Yeah, he you know what? I know. I agree with you. I think that I think they screwed the pooch on that one.
I don't like. They just.
It's a non-standard analysis.
They needed a lot of asterisks, and
Right.
they didn't put them there. But yeah, Mathologer did a great video on that. I don't know. I love that dude.
Well, did you hear that there's a guy that might have, I don't believe he did, but he might have solved the Riemann hypothesis?
Yeah, I heard about that. Landon wrote a thing basically saying he hasn't, because this paper that he cites that's really, really important hasn't been published anywhere and can't find it.
Yeah, I don't think Landon buys it either, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not Landon smart, so I haven't
Nobody's Landon smart. I mean, I understand what the Riemann hypothesis is. My only thing is I'm not heavy enough to understand what's the complexity of trying to prove it, right? If the Riemann hypothesis is true, then we can say that all the prime numbers have some kind of pattern to them, and all the non-trivial zeros will exist on that critical line. And that's what Landon does. He's a prime number expert, right? So for him, solving that Riemann hypothesis, it would be like the holy grail, because then he can actually say there is some kind of pattern to these prime numbers. Math sucks.
Math is great. Fuck you.
Why is it we drink, we start talking about math? What the hell's wrong with us?
Because
go back to the dumpster fire shit.
Oh wait, dumpster fire. Wotan, you don't understand Occam's
dumpster
razor.
fire. Hey, listen, I ain't no dumpster fire, right?
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor is the sickest shit ever. You have no idea how sick.
Occam's razor is badass, but you don't understand it, so you use it right.
Oh, really? So Robert St. Genis doesn't understand it either.
No.
He doesn't.
No, he doesn't. I like St. Genis. I really do, but
St. Genis thinks that Occam's razor means that the Catholic Church is right. Yeah. Earth is at the center. It's not.
Do you know?
No, that's not the context that he used Occam's razor.
I got St. Genis to admit.
Take him out of context.
Wait, Wotan, I got St. Genis to actually finally admit that using his Galilean transformations, you literally could make any place in the universe the center. And when I asked him, well, if you can use the Galilean transformations to make anywhere the center, then what is the special priority by which Earth is the center? Do you know what his answer was?
What?
God.
Well, I don't.
No, his answer was the Catholic Church.
The Catholic Church. I'm sorry, you're right. The Catholic Church, right?
Like God could actually be a higher authority.
Okay, you're right. Technically, he said the Catholic Church, but all practical purposes, because God made it that way. Because I called him out on his bluff, right? I've known these guys for a very long time. When the principle came out, I was on their video, literally talking to people, explaining to them why geocentrism was bullshit. And Robert St. Genis and a few other people, Mick Delano, would chime in, and they would have conversations with him. And a guy named Mark Wyatt. But he actually admitted that, okay, it's by faith by which we're the center of the universe. Well, you just took it out of the realm of science at that point.
Well, yeah, but then you would also have to assume that there are other centers of the universe to invalidate what he's saying, right? But we're saying that all of our observations, including the CMB, prove that we are the center of the universe.
No, it does not.
The CMB definitely doesn't prove that, man.
Yeah, that
The
is so
CMB
wrong. It's ridiculous.
All right. First of all, he doesn't believe in special relativity. So the CMB polarization that he's like, not polarization, anisotropy that he's looking at, that doesn't even like come out. Instead, it looks like I don't know. It looks like the universe is just cold in one direction and hot in the other because we're actually moving relative to the CMB
Correct.
right now. Like, yeah, it
And
doesn't look the same.
And even still, even if you took that axis of evil, if I remember correctly, it's like 12 degrees off, even pointing to the solar system. So it's not even pointing directly to us. It's actually 12 degrees off, which is significant. So it's not just like, oh, it's pointing right to the center of the Earth, as these guys had people believe. No. If you actually if you actually look at it, it's not even pointing towards us. It's pointing relatively, kind of, sort of, but 12 degrees is still 12 degrees. That's a huge
12
amount.
degrees off at 14 billion miles
That's a
away.
lot, exactly. Thank you.
I think that would even miss Andromeda. It's like we're maybe in the ballpark.
That's kind of like saying zero. Okay, I'm gonna face, like for me, I'm gonna face east, and then I'm sort of looking in the general direction of the Empire State Building. Okay.
I mean, that might be true. I don't know.
If I face east. Thank you, Bunny.
Well,
by the way.
I'm looking away. I'm in Denver. I'm looking away from the mountains right now. I'm looking straight at you, maybe. Kinda. I mean, within 12 degrees.
Yeah, within 12 degrees.
If you think about it, you are, but you have to wrap around the Earth enough times for the angle to match up with where the other person or the object you're referring to.
Oh, sure, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. Yeah.
Around the Earth.
Yes, around the
Earth. Yes.
Oh wow! I didn't know that was a thing.
Well, you should by now. It's not that hard. Rowley says Andromeda was a great show. I love Kevin Sorbo. Yeah, I liked Andromeda. By the way, did you happen to watch me play Kevin Sorbo in Prophet Azar's video? Did you catch that? God is not dead.
God, that was a great video. By the way,
thank you. He was like I want you to sound exactly like Kevin Sorbo in this particular clip. When I was like disappointed.
I would have rather seen you play like a ridiculous version of you, though. So the professor is now just Steve McRae, and he's like, "Say maybe to God."
Exactly. Yeah. Tell
say
Zod
maybe.
Tell
like,
Zod
that's
that.
what I want to see.
I want to do another video.
But no, that was solid. Yeah, you did great in that. Everyone did.
Yeah, that was a good video. People did a really good job on that. I like these collabs that we've been doing, especially the like the 7 things people can't answer, and I don't know.
Those drive me nuts because I always there are questions you could pose that no theist could answer. So like one of them is like, what's a counterexample to the Goldbach conjecture? You can just cheat. Just ask questions nobody can fucking answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, that's a little heavy, right? Wouldn't you think, though?
Yeah, that's what I like. Yeah, I'm a dick. I would find that funnier.
I have found that none of the theists I talk to can tell me when Jesus was born according to the Gospels. Because
sometime in the year 32 BC.
When he was born? In no?
Was it?
It was supposed to be 0 BC, and then
0 BC. Well, no, was he? Yeah, because I guess he was born in 0 BC. He didn't die in 0 BC. That's right. So basically, there was no zero. There was no 0 year though. It went from
right.
minus 1 BC to. Well, he went from 1 BC to 1 AD, right?
Yeah. Here's the issue. So in Matthew's Gospel, we would have it date to before 4 BC, because that's when Herod died, and he is a character in the birth narrative. And then if we use Luke's Gospel, we have the census of Cyrenius, and Cyrenius became governor in 6 CE. So there's this 10-year gap, and Jesus would have to be on either side of that gap, on one or the other.
Well, they definitely agree that he didn't.
He just stayed a baby for a decade. Everyone knows this.
They definitely agree it wasn't December 25th. I mean, I think most.
Well, yeah, sure.
Agree with that. I mean, it was probably had it relate to Sagittaria, the festival. Saturnalia, yeah, the festival of Saturn. By the way, thank you, Sounding, for the $10 for the rum fund. I will be using that. Actually, I got to get more alcohol because This is my last beer.
Yeah, but I was like at the school that I'm currently going to. There are plenty of like Christians around all the time preaching. One of them, we call him Pen Guy. He's a nice guy. I talked to him for a few hours the other day. And then there's this other dude that comes with like a few people from his church, and this dude is fucking nuts. Like he is a character though. Like he is really fucking entertaining. Like I would totally have him on Atheist Sunday School. He's one hell of a character.
By the way, that was fun. I really enjoyed that. I didn't think I was going to. I'm not going to front with you. I didn't think I was going to enjoy that very much.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly fun show because we do try to mix in like here learn some stuff, but also have some fun.
0132132 $10. Needed more palindrome.
$10 and a penny, you son of a bitch. I need that palindrome in there, okay?
I gotta think of a good palindrome. What's a good palindrome?
No, the penny is important. It's 1001.
Race car. Yeah, race. Yeah, RAC.
Yeah, no, race cars.
Yeah.
Race car 1. Yeah, that's palindrome.
Yeah.
Very good. Damn, you're quick on your feet, dude.
But anyways, I was talking to the crazy guy, like the guy who's completely off the rails, and his explanation for that is that the historians are lying.
I was thinking radar. Radar's a palindrome, ain't it? RAD. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So, anyways, yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's very vague when they posit that he was more.
Well, it's not even
It's a
vague. It
historical-
sounds like it's inconsistent. It's like impossible.
If it contradicts the Bible, you gotta go with the Bible, because the Bible is the holy word of God.
But the Bible contradicts the Bible in that case. It sounds like it's just maybe Jesus was a 10-year-old
It
baby.
does.
I mean, there's supposed to be 30 years of missing shit. Turns out it's only 20. Who knew?
Who knew?
It's only a contradiction if you believe the historians with their dates.
By the way,
and
I'm
such.
gonna put the Facebook group that I was talking about in the live chat. If you guys want to go in there and try to get in there, the other one I got kicked out of.
Don't do it.
I was rolling because I got kicked out, and I mentioned something on my Facebook page, and I still have friends in that group, and they were posting me going, "Oh, man, these guys are just mad as fuck about you," and I was like, "Yes."
Dude, I did not understand why were they so angry.
Because they didn't know how to refute my arguments.
It wasn't even an argument you were making. Is this a valid argument?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but we all know, like, Wotron would come in and be like, is this a valid argument for why the Earth isn't fucking round? And we'd all be like, fuck you, go away. Yeah, I think it was like that.
Kind of. Well, you know what's funny? Do you know how many times I've been accused of being a theist today alone?
Oh, that was great. Every time I see that, I take a shot.
Explain it to me. I don't get it. I really, honest to God, would like to know how anybody in their right fucking mind could think I'm a theist when I've been on how long? I've had so many episodes talking about these sort of things. People know
Well,
I
they
used
don't
to
know
be.
you.
Now,
Well,
do we
if
have
somebody-
They do know me.
the
No,
right
hey, no,
time?
I've been in this fucking group for years. Most of them do know me. Some people don't, but most of them do.
Oh, well, if any of the people that called you a theist know you, then
They're idiots.
they're either not paying attention or they're just flat stupid. Like,
Well, a lot of people who call themselves agnostic actually basically mean they're like a theist, but they don't know what the fuck the God's like. Like that's a lot of times what people mean by agnostic. So I could see that getting weird.
Maybe, but
dumb people.
But see,
I
again,
feel like you just said something against like an atheistic argument, and they were like, "Nuh-uh, theist."
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, seriously, they're like, well, you know, the burden of proof is on you to prove you're God. I'm like, I'm not positing a God, you dumbass.
yeah, here's the logic process behind it. You tell them that they're not a lacktheist, that atheists have the burden of proof of the denial. They say, no, I don't have the burden of proof. I'm a lacktheist. You're trying to make me. You must be a theist because you're trying to make me demonstrate something I don't believe. Yeah.
Well, I'm not even trying to do that. I mean, I try to explain to them it's a second order burden. Okay, and if you go look at the literature, they I don't know if they specifically call it that, but that's what they refer to it as. The reason being is if I say, hey, Lawrence, you know, you're telling me you did this, I don't believe you. You need to give a reason why, right? I can't say I don't believe you in a conversation, in an argument, in the Tolman method. and go, which is a method for argumentation, in a conversation, because Lawrence is going, well, why don't you believe me? I mean, what do you need from me to tell you? And by the way, that is not the burden of proof to begin with. The burden of proof is saying, I believe X to be the case, whether it's true or false. I now have an epistemic burden to myself to justify why I held that belief. If I say, hey, Lawrence, I went out and bought a puppy today, okay? He can believe me or not believe me, right? But if he believes me, he needs to justify his belief for that. The onus is upon me. The onus is upon him to explain to himself why he believes that. And he could do that very simply. Well, I mean, I've known Steve for a long while. He's a pretty righteous dude. He doesn't lie. He probably would like puppies because he loves puppies. And I accept his claim that he bought a puppy. It's not that big a fucking deal. So he believes I have a puppy.
Well, you certainly think highly of yourself.
I do.
You haven't taken him out.
You don't like puppies?
You don't have a puppy.
What the hell's wrong with you people if you don't like puppies?
I like cats more. I'm a cat guy.
You're a horrible human being.
Yeah, no.
I agree with that. I agree that I'm a horrible human being.
Cat people.
I would agree.
Not like
cats
cats too. Not like cats too. But you see.
Wait, I agree with Wotan on something. Shit.
Yeah.
That's it. Flat Earth.
But you see the burden. The burden. He has his own burden to why he believes me. Right. That's his burden. I'm not burden shifting. That's an epistemic burden. Now, if he says, "Well, Steve, you're making an evidential claim in science," like for example, if I say, "Hey, Lawrence, I've disproved the theory of relativity," now Lawrence doesn't have shit for onus. I have all of it. I need to demonstrate evidentially, not epistemically, that I've demonstrated the relativity is falsified. So there's a difference between an evidential burdening and an epistemic burdening, and for some reason, atheists get that confused often, and I don't know why. It's been explained to them.
It hasn't been explained to all of us. This is the whole thing.
I think it has a lot of times. I don't know how much times I can explain it. Really?
Look,
I think
you can explain it a billion times, and you're like, well, okay, a billion would actually be a decent chunk. You can explain it a million times, and it would still be like 1%.
I even have a blog on this, and I'm like, go read the blog.
I'm not going to read your blog, Steve.
My blog is good.
Neither is 99% of atheists.
I get that. I do understand the practical aspect of it, right? But when you explain to somebody, look at, when I'm making a belief positional claim, I don't have to prove to you anything. It's not a proof claim. It's just the burden of proof is a misnomer. But if I say, hey, Lawrence, I bought a puppy today, and Lawrence says, I don't believe you, do you know what I'm going to say to him? Well, who the fuck cares? Right? And I want you to think about this. Lawrence, you have an atheist show, so I want you to think of this very sincerely. If you wanted to convince a theist that your position is correct, and I don't know, are you a hard atheist or a soft atheist, by the way? I really don't.
I guess a soft atheist, I guess.
Okay, so you don't hold the position there are no gods.
I do not.
Okay, so you understand that classically in philosophy that is the agnostic position. You do get that, right? You would be agnostic in philosophy.
I guess, sure.
Okay,
but okay, sure.
Just go with it for right now. Just go with that. Okay, so
I am one of those guys that calls myself an agnostic atheist, so that's fine too. I know you have your I know you have your issues, but okay.
Well, not just me. I think other people in here do too. But okay, so now I kind of lost where I was going with that. Somebody remind me where I was going with that.
if I wanted to convince a theist,
yeah. So if you want to convince a theist, what is more likely a better scenario to do that? If I say, you know what, I don't believe you, or you know what, I believe you are wrong, and I'm going to believe the opposite of what you believe, and I'm going to show you why you're wrong. So let's play a little game here.
I don't believe you isn't the position, is it? It's
a non-position.
Like, if someone tells me they believe in Bigfoot, not that they've met the fucker and, had a whole Harry and the Hendersons adventure, but like if they just
based on a true story.
But if they're just like, yeah, I think Bigfoot's real, and I'm like, there's no evidence for Bigfoot, that's my position. It's not that I don't think that you believe Bigfoot's real. Like, that would be,
I get that, but there's a couple of problems you run into. One, you got to be very careful how you phrase it. If you say, I believe Bigfoot doesn't exist because you haven't proven me to the contrary, That's an argument from ignorance, by definition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't hold a position X if X has not been proven true. That's just a fallacy. But if you say to a theist, "Hey, theist," it's not that I don't believe your claim. It is that I think your claim is wrong. Let me show you why your claim is wrong. So for a strong theist, or basically a strong atheist or a philosophical atheist, they're going to own that burden of proof. They're going to say, look, I believe there's no gods. You believe there are gods. Let's have a conversation. I'm going to tell you why I believe there's no gods. A weak atheist doesn't do that. A weak atheist just says, well, I don't believe you. So the theist has no onus to explain to you shit. The theist says, I don't give a shit you don't believe me. And they walk away. They find somebody else who actually wants to put forth a position.
But it's not believing the theist. It's not believing the proposition. Like I actually am agnostic about Bigfoot. I'm kind of like,
really?
I don't fucking. Yeah, a little bit. Like, I know that evolutionarily, there's not like other descendants that we'd see, and it's almost definitely not true. But it's not like I'm not like convinced that there's no possibility that there's like some large ape that we hadn't known existed.
Giganticus.
That existed within recent human history.
But would you say, okay, how about this? Would you say, do you believe there's Santa Claus?
Oh, dude, absolutely. Saint Nicholas was a real person. No,
not
there was an actual Saint Nicholas.
I didn't ask about Saint Nicholas.
You mean like the fucking mall guy? The dude at the mall? I met that fucker.
No, I mean the guy that flies around in a reindeer-driven sleigh that gives presents to little children. Do you believe that exists?
Well, I haven't seen the fucking reindeer. I don't know. I don't think that part's true. But Santa's definitely real, and he has a drinking problem. And
I don't know what Santa did to you in your youth when you sat on his lap, but there's problems here, dude.
So you're telling me he's drunk driving up there in the sky?
Oh, he's got to be.
This is when people go, well, I don't even believe you exist, Steve. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Steve, you don't exist. You're just an artifact of the way that we perceive atoms.
Well, you know what? I can make the argument that nothing even exists at some point. I get into mirological nihilism. Have you ever heard of that, Zero? Mirological nihilism? It's a great fucking position, actually.
I used to hold that position.
You know, it's a great. It makes sense though in some ways, don't it?
It does, like on the face of it, absolutely. But
yeah, I don't. By the way, I don't actually kind of subscribe to that view. But
I mean, me neither.
If you want to fuck with somebody, mirological nihilism is the way to go.
Like that was like here's the thing. I'm gonna tell you a little story.
Sure.
So once upon a time, early days of YouTube, like I got on YouTube in 2008, and one of my first channels, and I say one of because I had a bunch of them. So one of them was the Russian atheist, and I was talking about pretty much the same stuff, except I was so fucking stupid. Like looking back at some of those videos, I was like, oh, I was so fucking stupid. I didn't understand shit about shit. And then in high school, I learned about nihilism, and I'm like, oh, and for some reason I was at that point where I was still a teenager. I didn't fucking understand any of this. So I was like, oh, if I'm a nihilist, I can't be an atheist. Those things are mutually exclusive. So I was like, fuck that channel. I'm going to start a new one and become the Russian nihilist. And that on that channel, I argued for that position. And that was also years ago. I actually went over some of the old videos that I made on that channel for the 5K special on this channel, and God, I was so fucking dumb.
How deep can you get into nihilism? I mean, it sounds weird, right? But I'm a moral nihilist, right? And so, I definitely can get into mirological nihilism. I don't accept it, but it's probably kind of cool on the outside, right? But I think people can make the arguments after a while that nothing exists.
I don't think nihilism exists.
I don't think nihilism exists. I'm a nihilist.
I don't think there's a person who could actually claim that they're a true nihilist in every sense of the word. I just think it's absolutely absurd.
No, that's true. I agree with you on that, actually.
Yeah,
there's so many different types of nihilism, right? I mean, a moral nihilist is not really a bad position. That's just an error theorist.
I actually want to see someone make Wotan's argument like that nihilism doesn't exist, but within that framework, like I actually think that you could make a convincing argument. I don't know.
No, like an objective, like an actual nihilist, not just a moral nihilist or a this nihilist or a that nihilist. I mean, like you're an actual full-blown nihilist, like towards everything.
Maybe some people in
That
comas.
doesn't exist.
Maybe.
You know,
Ooh, Fielding asked a good question. Fielding quantum
What-
mechanics.
You know what? If you want to do something like this, because okay, so in high school, the nihilist thing that like when I became a nihilist, it was actually really cult-like because there was this one guy that convinced everybody of this position, and he started this like hierarchy, and everyone had their fucking positions. So it was really like a fucking mini cult. It was so fucking weird. And like looking back on it, I was like, was I really that fucking gullible? But anyways, the thing is, that guy is he's on the channel actually. Steve, you spoke to him. He was our guy in the back that was switching everything up. Yeah. So he can still argue for that position. He just loves arguing about it. In fact, when he's losing an argument, he starts arguing that nothing exists, and somehow in his mind he thinks he wins. But it's really amusing. So if you want to,
when he says that,
if you want someone to just argue,
Did I just get wait? Did I get kicked out of atheist versus theist debate? I don't know. Did I get kicked out of that group? I've been in that group forever.
maybe, I don't know.
No, okay. I've been in so many different groups that I just don't even know where I'm at anymore.
Yeah, the last
now
thing
I'm
I
gonna get
saw
on
was that
Facebook.
thing.
Like, Facebook's
Last thing I saw-
scary. It has your real face and everything. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying that the last thing I saw was that they turned off the comments for that post because for some reason it was controversial. I don't get it.
So wait, atheism versus theism. They're not used to controversial posts?
They're too stupid to understand the basic post. These people are literally the dumbest of the dumb.
And here's
From any
here's how I
standard.
see it. The way I see it is that, you know, these are I guess new to this entire realm. So like there's, if I can put it in YouTube terms, it's like Venom Fang X versus Thunderfoot instead of the stuff we've been getting recently. Like it's like very.
I get that I have to start at the beginning when you go into a new group. These people have never been exposed to any of this stuff, right? So it is starting from the very beginning. By the way, you compare me to Thunderfoot because if you are, that's pretty cool. But I don't think that's where you're going with that.
Not exactly where I was going, but sure, why not?
Okay. But yeah, but there's something to be said by most of us that have been engaged in these conversations. We've been there, done that kind of stuff, right? And there's certain arguments that just we don't want to go back and revisit because they're just not worth the time. We've moved past the very basal arguments. So, for example, if I said, "Hey, Lawrence, you know, carbon dating doesn't work. You know, they dated a penguin, the live penguin, that it was like 1,200 years old." Do you really want to spend that much time on somebody who does that incompetent understanding of?
No, kind of over it.
Yeah, you just don't, right? So I've noticed with this Facebook group, they haven't even begun to dive into some of these concepts.
I have held very long conversations with flat earthers just trying to explain to them basic physics. Like GMMR that takes like a week to get to, I think.
Well, it's not just the flat earthers. I had literally a guy today tell me that the law of gravity is a proven thing. And I'm trying to explain to him, no, it's not.
No,
it's an
actually,
empirical observation that we assume that the uniform nature holds, right? We make that assumption, which is fine. But we cannot say that a million years from now the law of gravity is going to be valid. We don't know.
He's probably using proof in like that, like
Wait, a million years though I think is pretty safe. Now,
well,
like 20 billion years, less safe.
Well, I mean, Zero, you know as well as I do that there are theories out there that before inflation, the laws of physics may have been slightly different. We don't know, and they certainly could be in the multiverse. We definitely know that.
It's not even that you don't know; it's that you can't know. So that's one of the reasons
I don't
why
believe we can't know. I'm not.
Yeah,
quite convinced
we
of that.
might be able to know.
It's just literally, it's not possible.
I don't believe that.
That's not. Yeah, it's definitely not.
I don't know if we can know or not.
Yeah, I don't know if we can
Lawrence
know.
is
or
a good
not,
agnostic.
but I know that there's no knowledge that we can't know. That's what I'll say.
No,
Like,
I think we do have knowledge we can't know. I think there are epistemic limits, right? And I've used the analogy many times because I love it. Is the map territory, right? We only have a belief map. We only have a map to the territory. We never get to see naive realism for what it is. Whatever reality is, whatever base realism is, we never directly observe it. What we observe is filtered through our senses, through this sensory perception that we have, and we make a model of life, right? A theory of life. That's actually what a worldview is our beliefs, right? And that beliefs is what we think the universe is like.
Yeah, and different models are going to be accurate to different degrees. So.
And different belief systems. My map of the territory is different than your map of the territory, right?
Yeah.
all of us are different from Wotan's map.
Yeah, his map is way up there.
Wotan, you're living on a pizza, man, and that's got to freak you out.
And you're living on a spinning, flying, soaring, shooting,
Damn right.
revolving,
Yes.
orbiting space rock flying through the universe that didn't comprehend.
Yes, and I'm fine with that.
I'm
Like,
totally cool with that because we
And yet not
understand
a
that.
single- and yet not a single
Wotan,
being has
there are
ever
other
experienced
rocks.
in their entire life.
Oh wait, hear me out. There are unambiguously like other rocks, right? Like you can see rocks just on the ground, right?
Damn rocks.
And then we get shooting stars, which you also can't explain, where you can see in the sky that there are other things that do seem to move around the sun. Like, what real verifiable thing, other than your Pizza Earth idea, do you know
It's
of?
not a
that there's
pizza Earth. I do not believe in a pizza Earth. Thank you.
I don't know what
You
the hell
believe in a pizza? You believe in a flat Earth with
It is.
crust
It
around
is.
the end?
No. It is.
Ice
It
wall,
is.
ice wall.
Well, hang on. I don't know what he believes because
Excuse me.
Wotan
It
doesn't.
is.
Hang on. Wotan doesn't ever give his beliefs. He's always giving
Oh, that's true.
what he doesn't believe, which is ridiculous. Like kind of like atheists do in these conversations.
It is
I don't
flat
believe.
as far as we know, and that is it. What the shape
far
of
as
it
you
is,
know.
As far as
whether
you
whether
know.
we're on one edge of a hexagon or whether we're on one edge of an upside down triangle or pyramid or
That's
whether
what it is. We actually live on a.
I have no idea.
We
but
live.
all
We
I
live.
know,
We live in a
all I know
duodecahedron.
is that it is absolutely 100%.
It's a fact. Wotan,
Motionless.
it's a fact that God is playing Dungeons and Dragons, and we just happen to be on the duodecahedron dice.
Dungeons
Yeah,
We're
and
on
we don't
D20.
Yeah.
have
Actually, Wotan, I'll give you this as a freebie because I've done the math. If you only assume Newtonian gravity, it doesn't work with general relativity, but if you assume Newtonian gravity, you can actually have an infinite plane, and then you can actually explain like simple shit that you can do in your own home in terms of,
Well, I don't believe in infinity either. Infinity is a concept.
okay, but you could have an infinite plane, and that would actually produce
Well,
a
you could have
finite
you could have
gravitational force in a
infinite
uniform direction.
rainbow-colored panda bears. Also, like you could just assert anything. I don't.
Wait, you don't believe there's pandas?
Yeah, I don't know what he means by this. He doesn't believe there's
Yes.
infinities. I mean, you talk about actual or potential infinities.
Infinity is a limit.
Yeah.
Like everything
Yeah,
is
but-
kind of a concept because that's how we observe it. We aren't observing the.
No, but it just has
the-
no
we-
basis
we
in
have a
reality
concept
whatsoever.
All right, but when
Actual-
talking about
Infinity has no basis
space,
in reality. It is a 100% pure human construct. It is a pure.
Dude, you
No,
think the Earth is
there's
flat? You
human constructs
There
that
is no
aren't.
such thing as infinity.
Wait, Wotan, are you saying what's the maximum possible distance between you and me? Like, not even within reality, just, well, no, I guess kind of within reality.
There is no maximum. There's a set distance between me, and as long as both
No,
of us are not
but what's the
moving, there's a
maximum
set
that
distance.
could possibly be distant? Like, what's the absolute most far apart that we could be before we started getting closer together or something like that?
As long as we're not moving, I don't get what your point is.
Well, it'd be unbounded. I mean, obviously,
I guess
you could posit infinity,
you
but
could measure it like you get a tape ruler from one end of your foot to the end of my foot, or you could get you could go to
Right.
the atom, the atomic structure, and you can measure.
No. So if we did the
from
tape
atom
measure,
in the absolute center of your foot, and then then that would be different. But it just matters.
But
how
real
you
quick,
measure
I
if
gotta
we did the
I gotta
tape
super
measure,
chat real
and then
quick.
I started walking away.
Super
Let's
chat
just
real quick.
pretend I never
Yeah.
would die.
Super
If you have
chat.
one specific way
Hang
to
on,
measure it,
Hang on. Super
we're
chat.
not moving. Yeah, go ahead.
Cajun crustacean. That's a cool name. Cajun crustacean. 666. The Earth is a D20, and dinosaurs simply rolled a natural one. Yeah, that sucks for the dinosaurs, huh? They didn't make their savings throw.
20-sided dice.
Yeah.
But for real, mathematically, an infinite plane can actually have finite gravity in a uniform
Sure.
direction. And then you can actually have, like, shit. Like, Sly Sparkane in his goddamn bedroom was able to show, like, yeah, you can do a Cavendish experiment as long as you don't really give a fuck about the G value. You can do that shit anywhere. Like, people have done that shit in high schools. Like,
Well,
people do it all the time.
mathematically, with an infinite universe, you could prove that invisible panda bears that are rainbow colored, that have fucking, like when you can assume anything.
rainbow
That's not
color
true.
is
Well, wait.
actually
If he
logically
thinks,
incontrovertible.
there's no
if he thinks,
limit to the
wait,
possibility.
all right. If he thinks he could do that, let's hear your proof for that.
There's no limit to possibility.
You're just
Infinite is
asserting that.
everything.
Let's hear your proof.
Everything exists in an infinite universe. Everything that you could
That's not
possibly
true.
imagine.
That's not true at all.
Do you know the difference between a normal number and a non-normal number, Wotan?
A normal number and a non-normal number?
Yeah.
No, gotta explain it.
Let's say that, for example, the number pi. Okay, pi we all know is an irrational transcendental number. There's something what's called the normal.
I don't think Wotan knows what a transcendental number is.
Do you know what a transcendental number is, Wotan?
No, I'm not a mathematician.
Oh, okay, well, I mean,
It's not like the square root of a number plus some other rational
It means
number.
it has
It's not
no
like-
real roots for a polynomial. Is what
Yeah.
a transcendental number is. Okay, but if we're talking about the normalization of pi, it means that and I'm trying to think of the most simplest way to suggest this. Even I've talked to Landon about this. Let me try to relate it in a way that's going to be understandable. If pi is a normal number, then you will not have all the different numbers possible in there. Like, for example, people say, well, the entire encoded Shakespearean novels are included in pi. Because if you have an infinite number, then at some point in time, you're going to have, if you look at the letters and correspond them to some kind of whatever mathematical code that you're putting for the pi, you're going to include all the works of Shakespeare. That's only if it's a non-normal number. If it's a normal number, then it won't have that. And so it really depends on the frequency of the repeating based upon a certain base, which if you look into what's called a normalization of number, that's what it entails. But you're just throwing these things out there that for some reason that if you allow for infinite possibilities, anything can happen. That's not the case. There's nobody in the world that thinks that way. So
Actually, I can give a really specific example now that I'm thinking about numbers. I kind of forgot about this. So, an irrational number, someone tried to make the claim once, like, yeah, if you have an irrational number, then at some point you'll have a finite set of repeating digits that will repeat infinite times, which sort of seems like something that could possibly be true for, an infinite set of digits, right? But it's not actually possible for that to be true of an irrational number. Because if that were true, then you could basically just have. It's hard to explain shit.
yeah, when you start dealing,
can't prove infinity. You just cannot prove that something is infinite. It's just not.
I can
possible.
prove that things don't happen in an infinite, number of digits. So how can I not? I don't think you're right, and I don't think that you understand the concept well enough to.
Yeah, the problem is.
Say-
How do you? So prove. Right now, I'll give you a chance. Prove something is infinite.
Well, hang on. You don't. It's a nonsensical
Oh,
statement.
but when I first joined the chat, you guys were saying that you proved something. And then I was like, oh, well, you guys don't prove anything in science. And you're like, oh, no, we absolutely do. And now you're going to change it something. Now you're going to go back.
I'm going to show you. So, Wotan, when I do an infinite summation, right? If I have a summation of a convergence, such as, let's use 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16. So basically 1 over 2 to the n. If I do an infinite summation with that, I get 1. That is an infinite summation. That is the use of infinity in order to derive the series is going to converge upon.
How do you know you'll ever reach? You're saying that
You're not going to reach infinity, so it's actually a limit thing. There
is no limit.
No, you're not understanding.
No, there is. The limit's 1.
Yeah, the limit's 1. There's two things you're looking at here, Wotan. You have a convergence of the series. Okay, so when I take that series from n equals 1 to infinity of the summation of 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16 plus 1/32, that convergence is going to be equal to 1. Another way of saying that you could use.
What do you mean by convergence? Explain convergence.
What number, there's something called the partial sums. And a partial sum is basically saying, if n equals 1, here's my sum. Then if n equals 2, here's my sum. Those are called partial summations. If that partial summation gets closer and closer to a very specific number, it's considered to be what's called convergence. Now, the limit of that is basically saying in a sequence that if I have 0.9, for example, 0.99, 0.999, that's a sequence. The limit of the sequence that series is converging upon is 1. And in calculus, the limit of the sequence is considered to be the convergence of the sequence. So they're the same thing. So if the sequence is converging upon 1, that
How is it?
thing is
How do
equal
you
to
how do you know it's going to be equal to 1 when you've
Wotan,
never
I
been to the end
I
of
actually think I have a
infinity
better
to know that it's going to
possible.
equal 1?
Wait, Wotan. All right.
So
I want you
0.9
to.
represent converges to 1. It keeps getting closer and
it keeps
closer to
going.
1.
Yeah.
Well, that's what convergence means. Wait,
0.5,
Wotan, I have a question.
0.75, 0.9, 0.95, 0.98, 0.986. We can see. I'm just
Okay,
making those
what? So
numbers
then
up.
that must mean that there is a specific point to when you keep adding 9s that equals 1. So when is that? How many
there
9s?
is-
No.
no, Wotan,
No.
How many 9s does it take to equal
Here,
1?
hold on.
An infinite.
Hold on.
all of them.
An infinite.
An infinite. Okay, so let me know when you get to the end of infinity,
Wait.
which doesn't exist, and then
Okay,
let me
wait,
know.
Wotan. So you're saying infinity doesn't exist? I actually think I have a logic thing here.
No. I need
No.
you. You just said that not.
I know. I'm going to justify it.
Consistent.
All right,
Adding
listen.
0.9 is going to equal 1. Let me know when you just said that you know
right.
you know that
Wait,
when
Wotan.
0.99999 it's going to equal 1. Let me know
0.9
when you get to infinity it equals 1.
No,
Wait,
no,
let
no.
me-
You
let
don't
me
get
pose this
to
another way.
infinity. You don't understand these
So wait.
concepts.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, no,
No,
wait.
saying
it's
that it
not
equals
what you're
No,
talking
that
about.
if you
Steve,
bring it
I
on
actually have a really good
infinity,
idea.
it equals
Sure.
I'm pretty sure. Wotan, listen to
God,
me.
he needs to go look. He needs to go open
If
a
you
math
went-
book.
If you walked halfway, like let's just say the distance between you and the door to your whatever room you're in, if you went halfway to the door and then halfway again, how many times would you have to do that before you actually reach the door?
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay, but you're saying it's a finite number?
As long as you keep moving forward, I guess so, right? You're going to get there eventually. I don't know.
Well, how? But there's always halfway. You're moving halfway each time. So every
But
single
this is not the
time
same as you adding 9
It's
and then
just-
getting
it's-
to
I'm
1.
not talking about nines. I'm talking about the
No,
distance.
but we were talking about that, and I want you to clarify that because now you
I'm
changed
talking
your
to
mind.
you right now.
trying to
Okay,
explain
let's go the other way.
infinite.
You're moving 9/10 of the way to the door, right? Every single time, though, you're still leaving 10% of the total
Right,
distance.
but 1 would
between the
equal
door
me hitting
intact.
1 would equal me hitting the door.
Yeah, so you'll
Yeah.
never get there, but you'll get
But how do you know that?
because you're only moving. You're leaving 10% every time you try to approach the door.
Okay, so let me
you
know
are,
when
by
you do that for
definition,
infinity amount of
always-
times.
You're always 10% short of the distance to the door from where you
Do you
are.
understand in math you don't actually okay, for example, the number 0.9 I'm repeating, do you understand, Moton, that's not actually going anywhere?
But
It's
either
not-
way, you're not proving
Wait,
infinity.
let me explain to you something. 0.99 repeating, do you understand that is not approaching anything? Do you get that, right? It's not approaching anything. It is a number. It exists on the real number line, just like pi is a real number that exists on the real number line.
Right.
Okay, so 0.999 doesn't reach infinity. It is exactly the same as 1. They're the same number, just expressed differently. It's not that complicated of a concept.
I just don't believe it. That's all.
Well, you don't have to believe it.
You don't
You're an
have to believe
idiot.
it.
I don't.
All
right, wait.
It's a matter
Oh,
of
you
you
can call me an
believe it.
idiot. I could call you an idiot too, and you could think that 9 equals 1. I think 50 to 57 equals 700 trillion. Whatever. Yeah, you could just
Look,
say
well,
whatever
John,
the fuck
we
you
can all
want.
call Steve
I
an
never
idiot.
proved
It's
that
good sometimes.
0.9999
Right.
equals 1.
Yeah, well, the difference
Talk out of your
between
ass. You could do that too,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
could do that
the
also.
difference is people here have actually had math skills and actually have
Oh,
done the
wow.
calculus.
Okay, so
work.
let me know how many times you add 99999 together and makes it equal 1.
Wotan, how many
Infinity.
times would you need to get 9/10 of the
Infinity. Okay, prove
towards
infinity.
your door for you to reach the door?
Prove infinity.
Prove
I just-
apple.
I
Prove
just-
chair. Prove lamp. Prove Lawrence.
Prove infinity. No, it's
Wotan,
not
I just explained to you why you would never reach your door. So you would have to take how many steps, and you would always be getting closer to the door. How many steps would you have to take to reach it?
I don't know.
I
never made a
do.
claim that- I never
You
made a
don't
claim that I would
know,
ever
and
reach
your
the door in the
question
first place.
mark is infinity. That's the answer. I'm
Exactly.
telling you. You're welcome.
A great way to figure this out is using math.
Oh wow, concept,
True.
right? Yeah, can I suggest you go look at what's called a series and a sequence and go learning about infinite ones, and maybe you might have a better understanding of all this, because it's not that complicated. It's actually one of the easier things. Calc 2 is easier than Calc 1 in that regard.
don't start from the position of saying I don't believe you. Start from the position of what the hell do you mean? Please clarify.
Yeah, or
Because that's how
even better. Even better.
You guys understand me. When I say I don't believe you is because you absolutely can never prove anything that you're saying.
Try this, Rotan.
That's all.
You actually can prove mathematical.
You can talk out of your ass.
You
You
can
can say 0.9 equals 1, and I just don't believe you.
But I can
That's all.
prove that.
What's
But
the big fucking deal? That's the big fucking deal.
Rotan.
I don't believe you.
Good.
That's all.
You don't
Prove
have
it
to.
using the definition of.
Hang on, sir. Rotan, the difference is you don't have to believe shit. The difference is everybody who's educated, I can prove it to. You're using math.
Okay, so prove it to me. Prove to me how many
You're
0.9.
not educated.
I don't think you have the foundation to even understand it.
Well, you just say infinity, and then you say I'm not educated because I don't understand infinity. You just say infinity.
Do you understand math?
Yeah.
Okay, so you understand.
say infinity.
Well, let me get this one. So I want
Infinity.
to
Infinity. Okay.
I want to make sure I'm clarified.
Invisible gay, rainbow-colored unicorns. Okay, yeah. Okay, that too.
Do you know what an infinite decimal expansion is?
Infinite decimal expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds cool. Yeah, explain it.
Okay, no, I'm not going to explain it. I'm asking you these things because if you want to know
I'm not a mathematician. I told you I'm not a
right,
mathematician.
you're not.
Okay, so listen.
So no, listen to me. You're not a mathematician. You're not even educated in math. So
Okay.
this
I'm
is
not
when
a
this is.
mathematician
But man,
either.
Wotan, this is when you would
Let's
say.
let's pull an Einstein quote.
This is when you
let's
say.
let's
this
pull an
is when you
Einstein
say,
quote.
please-
Einstein said that if you
Okay, do not interrupt me because I can't talk loud, and this is my hangout. This is when you say, I do not know shit fuck all about this topic. I have people in here that do. I'm going to be fucking non-idiot here and actually listen to them. Would you like to do that? That's fine. But since you do not have any knowledge of any kind on these topics whatsoever, don't correct other people. Say to yourself, I'm an idiot on these things. Please explain it to me and we'll be happy to do so. Does that make sense?
if you cannot explain something simply, you don't
I can
know
explain
what
it very simply. I'm telling you, you don't even have the kindergarten level, but I can still explain it to you. Would you like me to?
You're just calling names. That's all you're doing.
Would you
That's all
like
you
me
ever
to?
do. That's all you people ever do is just call names.
would you like
You'd
me
rather
to?
not educate. You'd rather not educate, and you'd rather just belittle and just call people names.
Okay, would
and then
you
put
like me
yourself
to?
on, and then put yourself on a throne, and then be like, oh well, I'm smarter than you.
I am
because
smarter than
but
you.
don't- but
Everybody
you
in
don't-
this room is smarter than you.
You just say infinity.
I don't
Okay,
know
I say
about
I
lies,
say
but-
invisible pink pandas
No, I'm
too.
kidding. Okay, so
Wait,
so
something can't be invisible and pink, Wotan.
yeah, that's a
I'm sorry.
contradiction.
Why not? Oh, why not? Why not? In an
Because
infinite
pink is
universe, why
talking
not?
about
It's a contradiction,
In an
you
infinite universe, why
dumbass.
not? Why?
Color.
Why?
Do you understand the contradiction there?
Why?
'Cause you're-
Invisible pink
You're
unicorn.
invisible. You have no color. Color is
There's an invisible pink unicorn in front of you right now.
You
Prove me wrong.
cannot have a color if you are invisible. That's what
Are you
invisible
sure?
means.
Why not?
Yes.
Wait, Wotan. So you're saying there's an invisible pink unicorn in front of you. What? How do you know the unicorn in front of you is pink?
Because it's invisible, and you know, and you just it's
So
just,
everything
it's just
invisible is
there. You know,
pink?
It just doesn't matter.
Okay, so let me
So
let me
you
people
redefine-
ask
It
me to
doesn't
break
matter
this
in
down.
infinite
Okay.
universe.
So
You've
Wotan,
redefined pink.
Hang
That's fine.
hang on, Wotan. You've had kindergarten math, I assume, right?
No, kindergarten. I never went to kindergarten. Never went to school. Never did anything. I just
Okay, I
grew
believe
up
that. I
in
believe
a
that.
cardboard box.
So if you would have been in first grade or
Kyle.
second grade, you learned something called fraction. Do you know what a fraction is?
Fractions, I don't know what fractions are, man. You gotta let me know what fractions are. I never heard of it. What's a
Okay,
fraction?
so 1/3 would be a fraction, right?
Oh wow, that's very cool. Wow,
Okay.
I never.
Do you know
haven't
how
heard
do you
that.
know how to convert 1/3 into a decimal?
No, wow, I never knew. No, how do you do that?
Okay, it's
How do you do it?
it's 0.33 repeating.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so if you take 1/3 and you times it by 3, you get 1. You take 0.33 repeating and times it by 3, you get 0.999. They're the same number. There you go. There's your proof. See how easy that was? 0. Did I overcomplicate that? Could I break it down any simpler that a child?
I'll be
could
honest. I
understand?
think you oversimplified it, and I'm not sure that I would accept that as a proof. But
It's not
I actually, I'm an asshole. I'm sorry.
Right, but one is 0.999.
No, I
Like,
can do it
if
for
you
a
would, if
proof.
you would, like, listen, I used to work in a machine shop, so if you were to do something 0.999 versus 0.1, that's a pretty big difference. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. That's what we're not saying.
That
0.99.
actually would, if you would have presented, because I actually
Correct.
used to work in a shop that used to manufacture parts for the Navy, if you were off by that much,
Wotan, you're not
and you would,
understanding.
You were
Wotan,
off by how much?
Listen to me very carefully. We're not saying 0.99. We're not saying 0.999. We were saying 0.99 repeating, which means an infinite amount of nines. Do you understand the difference? You keep changing it. You keep changing it to 0.999. That's not what we're saying.
So it's like if you started at 0.99, and then you got 90% closer, and then 90% closer, and you kept doing that until you got there because you think there's a finite point where that would happen.
Correct.
There's not a finite point where that would happen, but you think there is, and that's close enough?
I don't think there is. I've never said anything.
So wait, you don't think you'd ever get there? So how long would it take you to get there?
I don't
Infinite.
know. I'm
There
not
you
the one
go.
who believes
You
infinity.
believe in infinity. You're
You
done.
are the one that believes infinity.
No,
Not me.
you just said that it would.
Do you know infinity actually exists on the complex line as well? It's called the Riemann pole or the North Pole or the Riemann sphere. It's actually the complex number in the complex plane. So there is such thing as a complex infinity. These things do exist in
I mean, he's
mathematics.
right that it's a human convention.
Well,
So
sure. So every number. That's like saying
So
prove
is
2.
0.9. So is 9.
Prove,
the concept of
prove
9.
5,
That's-
Wotan. Prove 5.
Prove 5?
Yeah.
2 plus 3.
No, you're not
What
proving
the hell
5.
is a 2 or a 3?
Yeah, what's a 2?
What's
I
a
don't
plus?
prove 2.
I don't know.
It's all what do you call arbitrary? Doesn't matter.
Oh,
Kind
really?
of is.
So wait. So
it's
wait.
axiomatic.
It's
which is
axiomatic.
sort of
It's not arbitrary.
but-
The axioms we choose are arbitrary. This is true, but I don't
But we
know.
choose
he
them to
doesn't-
represent reality.
I don't
like-
think he knows what axiom is, dude.
I know what axioms are.
No, you
Things that are given to be absolutely true. I know what
No, it's
axioms are.
not. That's not what an axiom is. It's absolutely wrong.
Well, you're
I mean, you
giving
assume
the
it to be
value that
true
it is
for the
true.
case of
Who the hell thinks that an axiom is absolutely true? You don't even
Oh,
prove.
dude,
You never even prove axioms.
Wotan. Have you ever heard anyone argue about the axiom of choice? It
A
is
statement or
Oh, you're
proposition
gonna get
is
into
regarded as
this
being
guy doesn't know
established,
basic math. And you
accepted,
could try to
or
explain him
self-evidently
ZFC
true.
theory.
That's
Come on.
exactly the
well,
definition that
axiom
I'm
of
using.
choice. You can actually explain
But
easier.
did I not
concepts
just say
of
that? I said something that was accepted to be true. That is exactly what I just said. That was an axiom, right?
No,
And
you
let's look at the
said something
definition
you
of axiom.
assumed
No.
to be
I'm
true.
not going to let you know. I'm not going to let you talk because you just said I don't know what an axiom
excuse
is.
me? No. I decide who the fuck talks in here. That's me, not you.
But the axiom of choice is not that complicated to explain. It's kind of like the idea, like if you have a fuck ton of pairs of shoes, you can determine which one is left shoe or right shoe, right? Like you can identify that. You can assign them to separate groups. You can't do the same thing with socks. But the axiom of choice is basically saying, I mean, yeah, you fucking can, but fuck it, you can for the sake of this mathematical argument.
Right. I said an axiom is something that is accepted to be true, and that is literally the exact definition
You
of
said
an
that
axiom.
you accept
A
absolutely
statement-
as true.
A
is what you
statement
said.
or proposition that is regarded as being established,
You
is
said
accepted,
absolutely.
or self-evidently true.
You said absolutely.
But I meant it in that context. And,
But the axiom of choice
no,
isn't
I was exaggerating. Sorry, I used the word absolute.
like the axiom of choice isn't necessarily accepted. It's like a decision between whether we
Well,
want
the
to
problem is
say.
that the
We
problem-
all know the
the pro-
definition of axiom. Okay,
No.
let's get past that. Okay,
the,
now
the
All
problem,
right,
the
sorry.
problem with the axiom of choice is that if you accept it, then you have to. There's certain things that follow. For example, the Tarski paradox. You can only do the Tarski paradox if you accept the axiom of choice. But there's so many in ZFC theory. There's so many different axioms. There's axiom of union, axiom of extensionality. These things are freaking ridiculously hard to understand just in second order mathematics. I
I
don't.
actually think axiomatic set theory is an easier place to start. Like I feel like if we start,
If you're going to be
No,
dealing with, if you're going to deal with like ring theory, maybe.
no, I'm talking about like I actually think that's the shit we should go in with for kindergartners. Like if you start explaining a set and you're not talking about numbers yet, it's like, yeah, let's just say I have a bunch of apples. I can call that a set of apples. Or let's just say I have a set of fruit, and then I want to have subsets of that. Oh, these ones are apples, these ones are oranges, these are pears. Like you can talk about set theory in really general terms, which, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to try explaining that to Wotan. You know the difference between a pear and an orange, right?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm being a dick. I actually like you in general, but I am being a dick. I'm sorry. I'm drunk. I'm not good at being drunk.
I'm trying to get drunk. I'm not there yet.
Dude,
Get on my level. I'm a great drunk.
what are you drinking tonight? Like, is that a thing?
Well, I got a bunch
I'm
of cases
drinking-
sent to my house that I have no idea who the hell
I
sent
got
them.
blonde ale because I like blondes.
I had a
I
shit ton of
have,
cases of beer sent to my house, so I'm drinking them.
I have
know,
an Angry Orchard, and I also have my absolute all-time favorite rum.
Ooh, nice.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Let me show you
cannibal.
what was going on in this group here. This is so freaking hilarious. When I'm telling you these guys are fucking idiots. They really truly are. It's like every trope that you've ever really ran across when it comes to bad atheism. This is in this group, Atheist versus Christian Debate Central. Like bald as a hairstyle.
Partially.
It's like, for fuck's sake, what do you do? Listen, what do these people do? Go to a YouTube video, go, oh, I'm just going to parrot the most goddamn stupid thing in the world?
Hey,
Oh.
bald is a hairstyle, though. Like, that's actually kind of true.
Well, there's actually something called a. It's funny. There's actually what are they called? It's not true contradiction. It's basically true fictionalism. When you're talking about fictionalism, and you say something along the lines of a fictional truth statement, and the king of France is bald. Okay. The problem is there's no king of France, right? And so is that statement true or false? If you
It's
treat
false.
it if you treat it as fictionalism, you can treat it as false.
True.
But if you don't treat it as fictionalism, it's a non-truth apt proposition to begin with, right? So it is not even a truth apt proposition. So these people positing as bald a hairstyle, they're not even determining whether it's fictionalism or not. And second of all, atheism is not just somebody who says I don't believe, right? It is not lacking of anything, as Matt Dillahunty would say. And so,
Colloquially, it is.
well, yes, colloquially, but they don't
But,
understand the difference
bald
between.
isn't just lacking hair either. Like, you can shave your damn head, and that
Yes.
is a style people choose.
Yes, that's true.
Bald is a goddamn hairstyle.
But they don't seem to understand that the difference between colloquialism and formality. And I don't give a shit what people pick, but they need to understand the fucking difference, right? Because
I
if
still
somebody,
actually think, even colloquially, I think there's a difference between agnostic and atheist in a sense. So, like, Steve, you said you would put your internal p-value, for lack of a better term, for whether gods exist is between 40 and 60%.
yeah, that sounds about right.
I think most atheists would be more like, it's like, I don't know, like maybe 10%. Like, I don't think that they would put it around.
Well,
the
okay,
20.
but see, at that point, I got a problem. If you're at 10%, if you don't have that belief, then I think you're irrational. If you're at if I say, hey Lawrence, I'm going to give if you bet $10, I'm going to give you a 1,000,000 to 1 odds. Okay, 1,000,000 to 1. I'll pay out 1,000,000 to 1. So if every dollar you get, you bet, I'll give you $1,000,000. And it's on a 90% surety you're going to win. Would you believe that you're probably going to win?
I mean, by probability, yeah.
Yes, right? So it's rational to think with a 90%
Oh,
probability.
wait. That's not the same question. You asked him if he thinks he would probably win.
What do you think beliefs are? Beliefs are based upon probabilities.
Do you believe you would win is the analogous question.
Yes, I believe I would win. At 90%, sure.
Complete beliefs are based on probabilities. Every single premise in a statement is.
We don't deal with certainties. None of this deals with certainties. But let me ask you this, Lawrence. Do you believe there's ghosts?
No.
Okay. Do you believe what we would generally consider to be supernatural?
No.
Okay. Do you believe in methodological naturalism?
Yes.
Okay, so you accept in science methodological naturalism, right?
Yeah.
And I think everybody in here agrees with that. Do you accept ontological or philosophical philosophical or ontological naturalism, meaning that you accept all that exists as natural?
No.
Okay. So you don't believe there are ghosts, but you're agnostic on supernatural then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, what would supernatural even... Nope, I don't think it even means anything. I don't think anyone
there's an argument to be had for that.
supernatural.
There's definitely an argument to be had for that. I usually, like I said, I tend to make them tell me what they mean by supernatural, right?
All right, let's say they go with fucking Harry Potter. It's like, oh, Harry Potter can use magic. That seems pretty supernatural. Like, yeah, sure, kind of, but if you want to analyze the magic of Harry Potter, like if that were a real thing, then there would be naturalistic attributes in terms of consistent causal relationships between the dumb Latin shit people said and random shit that they made happen. Like, there would be an actual causal relationship, and that's something that you could examine using science. So, like, it would be naturalistic in that sense. It would just be fucking weird.
Well, I mean, when people posit a deity, I think most people understand that deity is something out of the norm. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Okay, so that's what they say would be supernatural, right? Something that a deity that can actually change the prescriptiveness of the universe and say, I want this to be some other value, right? That's not okay to posit something like that.
Right, but normal is like kind of subjective because like it could be a part of normality, but we just don't understand it, and it's just
Yeah, and like
But at
naturalistically,
that point, does it have
you
meaning?
can have a different value for that parameter. Just it depends on the vacuum state that you're in. Like that can actually be a physical, real thing that you could alter that. Like we could maybe make
somewhat.
a machine that could do that, and that machine wouldn't suddenly become, Yahweh sitting there shitting fire out his ass and sending Moses messages and burning bushes.
Yeah,
and shit.
I'm moving away from all that as well. I mean, a lot of things about the Bible just don't make sense to me. But Lawrence, would you agree that? Let me see how I'm going to word this. Do you think you're a fence sitter for your position?
I mean, I don't think so,
Okay.
but I guess
How are
it's
you?
pretty-
How are you not a fence sitter? You don't believe the position is true. You don't believe the position is false. You're literally sitting right in the middle like an agnostic by not accepting the theist claim, right? You're saying the theist is positing this. You don't believe them. The atheist, the philosophical atheist, is positing the opposite. You don't believe either of them. You're sitting literally fence sitting between them. Would you agree?
I don't know if I would call it fence sitting. I don't know how I would like assign even a probability for such things.
Do you think agnosticism is fence sitting?
I also don't consider that fence sitting.
I don't mind it. I think it is fencing in a way because you're not assigning a truth value to the proposition.
Not sure. I haven't really thought about it.
We do. We think about this a lot.
I mean, no, yeah, that's fine. I'm saying I haven't.
Speaking of deep thinkers, RC apologists. It's been a while.
About time to recognize me.
Malaikum assalamu alaikum.
Allah.
Alaikum salam.
So have you got any closer to atheism, there, buddy?
No, much farther away from it.
Really, you're entrenching yourself into Calvinism.
Pretty much.
Huh? Maybe Lawrence and RC apologists should have at it. That'd be fun.
About what?
Well, he's a Calvinist, a 5-point Calvinist.
Okay.
So Calvinists are the people that think that torture forever was like a deliberate choice.
Yeah, the only difference between RC apologists and actual other Calvinists is RC's pretty cool because all the other Calvinists are fucking assholes.
Really you haven't met every Calvinist then.
The vast majority.
If that's the position, then why shouldn't we just, like, when Judgment Day comes, just, like, get some iron chariots and just nudge God into the lake of fire, and then the rest of us can just, kind of live our lives. That seems way better than just letting people burn forever. That sounds...
Well, if you can.
Well, the iron chariots are, like, his kryptonite, right? I thought that was...
Yeah, we got this. I agree with you. Do that. Genius.
Yeah, let's do this. All right. Gang Squad on Apocalypse Day. I'm in.
I don't see where Iron Chariots are his kryptonite, but all right. Go ahead.
Bible?
Go ahead.
Judges.
Yeah.
Joshua. I think it's in the It's at some points in the Pentateuch too, but it's very. I can't remember the exact verses right now, but I remember during the readings I was like, he seems to have a real problem with iron.
That's because he's
Judges 1:9, and the Lord was with Judah, and he drave out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley because they had chariots of iron.
That's because God is a Bronze Age god.
Well, bronze is still pretty cool. It's not as cool as iron.
Yeah.
But actually, Steve, this brings up an actual interesting point from my perspective. Because, like, for me, if it turned out that, there's a version of the Christian God out there, I would still be a naturalist, and I would still be thinking, okay, how do I prevent this terrible shit from happening to billions of people? Like, what do I do about that?
Well, I don't think you'd have much of a empowerment. I mean, if there's a being out there that's able to change the laws of the universe, you're not going to be able to go against him.
You don't know that for sure.
I say, come at me.
I'm pretty convinced of it. If he
I know you're convinced of it, but I'm saying,
if he can snuff you out of existence just by a mere thought, I don't think how much of a chance you have.
Okay,
well, if he snuffs me out of existence, I win.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point too. Yeah, that would be a victory. position. But I also don't think that the version of God that you see in the Bible can actually snuff people out with a thought. Like,
why not?
Well, because he can't fucking snuff
for one,
chariots
he
of
never
iron
was.
out with a thought, and he can't beat newborns at hide and seek. Like, that's like the first thing that happens. He's like, "Hey, Adam, where you at? Adam, what are you doing?" Like,
He's the worst hide and seeker of all time player.
and then here's kind of like just a funny thought that I had while reading through Genesis. Like, so when God says, "Adam, where are you?" Adam just kind of says, "Oh, hey, here I am." But then later, when Cain kills Abel, and God asks Cain about where the hell Abel is, Cain says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" So, like, he learned from the mistakes of his father, and he learned how to lie.
and he thought that he had a theory of mind about God where he could conceal information, and that might work. Like, even if that's not true, why would God asked the question because he wanted to see what the answer would be. Like, the Bible has God claiming, "Oh, it's like, yeah, I know everything. I know all the things. I can do whatever the hell." But it doesn't actually show him doing that. So, like, I'm not convinced that the Christian perspective should include a God that has all the omnis. Like, I really...
Well, they can't. All the omnis is logically inconsistent. That's a given.
But, like, that's
So
the thing. Like, if I found out that was supposedly the case, I wouldn't be thinking, "Oh shit, there's this completely limitless thing," because I don't think a completely limitless thing makes sense.
I don't have an issue with that. What I have an issue is more the contradictions in the consistency of the logical system for an omni God. If you're saying a God is omnibenevolent, omnipresent, and omniscient, and evil exists, that is effectively the logical problem of evil, right?
I actually don't even think you need... I think omniscience and omnipotence...
Yeah, you can make an argument of the two. I've seen it worded just with the two. The original one was with the two. But even still,
if you get rid of just omniscience and you're just like, okay, omnipotent, maybe a little dumb, definitely limited knowledge, you could still trick one of those.
I
You could
agree
be like,
with you.
just look at the end of time. What do you see? Oh shit!
There's
he's
other
not
attributes of
consistent.
God that are just as inconsistent internally. The concept of judgment, or excuse me, mercy, and of justice are incompatible with each other. Mercy is literally the suspension of judgment, and judgment is the suspension of mercy. It is inconsistent to have a being that's 100% merciful and 100% just. It is not possible. Those are at odds with each other.
Well, either way, when you're talking about something having properties, you are effectively saying that it kind of can be boxed in. There are concepts that apply to it, and then other concepts that don't. Like,
but those concepts still need to have a congruency between them, right? You can't posit
no, I
so to be
agree. I'm just saying,
If I say this is 100% black and it's
naturalist.
100% white, there's a problem there, right? You cannot have both. You can have a grayscale, but you can't have 100% black and 100% white, just like you can't have 100% merciful and 100% just. And the Bible posits something like that, and that is a nonsensical position.
I don't actually think the Bible does, though. It just does that if you assume God is always telling the truth. But, like, there's not a
God
good
is
reason
just,
to assume.
God is merciful. So is it only part
Yeah, he says he is. He's not actually. He doesn't act that way.
Well, that's a performance problem.
The thing is, it's not like a conscious thing that people were thinking about. It was, this huge evolution of a God concept, and like over thousands of years.
Well, yeah, no, it clearly changes, but
yeah,
all I'm saying
it changes with time and with authors. It's
hey,
I think it's pretty cool.
RC, you know how I can disprove your God? I can do it in one word. Ready for this?
Go ahead.
Brace yourself. Ready?
Go ahead.
G-Man. There you go. I win.
No,
I win.
no, man.
He's one of yours, baby.
He's
one of yours. You have to
going to the,
own
to
that
the judges,
shit. He's one of
but
yours.
going to the Judges 119 thing that you mentioned, the issue there is not that it's some sort of kryptonite thing. The main thing that's dealing with it is that the people who are going into the war against these people. They had sinned and rebelled against God, who was originally going to promise to be with them to drive them out. But because of their sin against God, as a result, he withdrew his hand from that, which is why it says that because they had chariots of iron, which is reflecting more onto the fear of the men that are engaging in the war against these things, because God's not going to help them out because of their sin that they had against him. And as a result, it's reflecting upon the image and the fear that they have. So that's why, because these men had chariots of iron, they couldn't be driven out, because that's completely without the help and assistance of God in that battle, what the other soldiers are going to have to deal with. So that's the main thing with that. It's not an issue of.
All right, I'm going to be 100% real with you, though. To me, that sounds like something I would say, like, "Oh, I've had a little bit to drink, and I'm not in the mood." So I say to my girlfriend, "Sorry, whiskey dick, not in it tonight. We're just going to hang out, watch TV. Sorry." To me, that's what that sounds like. It sounds like it's an excuse, and I really I don't see actual good biblical evidence for the notion that God has no possible weaknesses. I mean, within the story, he gets nailed to a piece of wood. I'm pretty sure that I could avoid that if I talked hard enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he could, but he did that so that he fulfilled the prophecies that is mentioned in the Old Testament, specifically of Psalm 22.
Okay, those prophecies were just some made-up shit, though. He could have said something different in those prophecies, oh, by the way, this terrible thing totally won't happen.
Written as prophecies. Psalm 22 wasn't written as a prophecy.
Well, there's plenty of stuff in which the Jews did view it as a prophecy, as well as the language that is utilized in there is indeed prophetic. And that's why Jesus cites it whenever he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He is citing the very beginning of a psalm, of which is talking about the Messiah that the Jewish people had been waiting for. And that's why he's quoted it, so that the Jews who were with him at that time of his crucifixion know what he's talking about. Just like if I were to say just simply the words, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound," in church, people already know the theme and the point I'm getting at whenever I just bring that specific thing up in a conversation. So too in the case of the
prophecies, where did those? What was the source of the prophecies? Where did those come from?
Well, the source of the prophecies?
Yeah,
I believe from God.
So God basically said, "Oh, there's this terrible situation that I'm going to be in. Oh no." And then it happened. That doesn't sound like controlling the situation. That sounds like it's just
no, scripture didn't work in which he's saying the words exactly word for word. That's the Quranic understanding of inspiration and such. The issue is that the men were inspired by God concerning this, and they wrote down the certain.
So basically, you think the Bible has the capacity to be wrong, and you're still on board with the general premise, though? Has it? I don't know.
I believe that there's issues where the Bible talks about a flat earth, that hair length is involved with fertility of a woman, and that there's the tiny human being inside of the testicles of a man. But these are issues that are focusing on the ancient science perspective, and they're not meant to be.
I saw that shit in Family Guy. There are little tiny humans in testicles. All right, that's just true. It was definitely Stewie met them. He shrunk himself down. It was a whole thing. He almost had a brother.
Well, I just find it interesting how you're putting some things into their historical context and then not others.
No, I'm considering the whole entirety of the whole thing, and it's historical.
Well, you can't just say the entirety because it's so different throughout the whole thing, because they were all written at different times for different purposes.
Right, and that's the point, is that we go through different periods and understand the historical aspect at that particular time period. That's why we go from Old Testament and understanding ancient Near Eastern cosmology, and then we focus around the Roman area, like the whole issue about the testicle sperm thing. That's when we examine the Roman medical texts that they had, and we see the little graphic depictions in which it shows a man's legs sticking out of what we see as the sperm cell. That was how it was viewed back then, that it was a tiny man inside of the testicular area.
So when Abraham wrestled with God, though, that was a cultural thing. Culturally, they believed that God was...
I believe you're referring to Jacob.
It was Jacob, yeah.
Was it?
It was Jacob.
Yeah, no, I haven't read that shit in a long ass time.
Yeah, Jacob, he was wrestling with the angel of Yahweh, which was basically be what we would call Jesus, is that it is a God incarnate manifested in the flesh that is there. And culturally, we understand that that's exactly how they would view it, as the angel of Yahweh, which for Jewish scholars have recognized this is basically the second power of heaven in certain Jewish traditions and views. That
So
is
the
that there
angels
is
have limitations, but Yahweh doesn't.
the what?
The angels have limitations, but Yahweh doesn't.
Well, that actually
It's
makes
for-
sense.
Well, the thing is,
They're
at
created
least the
beings.
way it is, in the way it kind of plays out in the narrative is that angels are kind of like an extension of Yahweh. So I think I don't know your name. I'm just gonna call you RC. So
He's been
I
called
think you
worse.
kind of. I mean, I think that's fairly accurate. I know that definitely like that Son of Man tradition was. I don't know if it would have been. I don't think it. I'm not sure if it was there that early on, but it definitely played a big role later. But yeah, the angels are kind of seen like an extension of God.
So God has limited extensions, but his own power is just limitless. That just seems weird.
Wait, where's the idea that there's limited extensions?
Well, Jacob didn't get his ass kicked right away, right? It was like a whole thing. I don't know, man. I haven't read this shit in so fucking long.
Who does?
Well, I mean, I don't see where
Well,
the whole...
lucky for you, I do a reading of the text on my channel.
No,
That's not
he has
lucky
other
for
people
me.
do the reading for him.
hey, I have a lot of people do the reading, me
I-
included.
I read that stuff when I was, and it was actually a mistake to give me a Bible in that phase. Like I just started reading a bunch, and my parents were like, "Oh yeah, check this out. This is the thing you should read." And I read through it, and I was like, thinking about it the way I thought about fiction. I was just like, these things don't quite make sense together. It's a little weird. This definitely doesn't fit with the shit that they say in Sunday school. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, let me ask RC. RC, if you had to go out of your way to disprove the Bible, what approach would you take?
If I had to go out of my way to disprove the Bible, I would do my best to get as much as the up-to-date scholarship into the Bible from conservative, believing scholars on the matter, as well as even some of the liberal ones. And then I would try to focus on in understanding it from the actual sources, as well as taking Christianity in the way that it would want to be taken, because that's exactly what I do with Islam. I go to the Islamic scholars when examining their viewpoints. I go to the Quran and try to keep in mind the doctrine of abrogation, because otherwise then you can just simply say, well, there's contradictions in the Quran. Well, you can't really say that or make a valid argument in convincing people if you do not understand the doctrine of abrogation at all.
The Quran's a little different because it was written by one dude in one lifetime. Like, it's a lot easier to get your story straight if you're one person.
Not necessarily, because the other issue is also dealing with textual variance and textual criticism with the Quran, which there are things that have shown that it does vary from some of what some scholars, not all of them, because they recognize that there is actually textual variance compared to they originally said. You won't find a single word or letter changed in the different variants of manuscripts. It's all the same exact thing from beginning to end. That is not the case once we have seen the manuscript evidence. And that is why they moved to this, and I think this is more consistent, that they talk about the preservation goes towards the eternal tablets in which the Quran was written in heaven. That's talked about in Surah 85, ayat 21 to 22.
Do you have links on that in terms of textual variance? Do you have videos or anything? Because I actually would love to check that out.
Yeah, there's actually in a documentary called The Sword and the Crescent by Exegetical Apologetics, or he used to be Reformed Apologetics Ministries, which is also on his website. The article about this, he talks about the new research that's come out on Quranic corruption in the manuscripts and new research that has come out. The only problem with that is that at one time the source he uses is from a guy named what was his name? Dan Baker. or Dan Brubaker, and he had just finished his PhD thesis, and his thesis was on intentional changes in the Quran. And he was supposed to publish this, but apparently, from what I tried looking up, he never got to publish it. So what happened was that the sources that exist out there come from people who were given like a sneak peek access. So J. Smith, Exegetical Apologetics, those are the only fragments we have of a unpublished work that failed to get published. But that was his PhD thesis that he used in his graduation, and he applied and mentioned there's like tapes when people were trying to hide variants and such, they would put some taping and tape over it and then write on top of it, or they would just tape it and kind of remove certain words. So that's some of the things that is mentioned about some of these textual variants. Can
you give me that name again? The guy whose PhD thesis it was?
Daniel Brubaker, Brubaker.
All right, guys, if you want to come in, the link is in the video description and in the live feed. Come in now because I'm not going to keep it open much longer.
I'm going to look at it.
By the way, everybody that I invited to come in from that group that was keyboard warriors, or like, because I spent about an hour with each one, and I'm like, I'm done. And like, oh, look at you, coward, you run because you've been proven wrong. I'm like, listen, motherfuckers, if you want to come in, hang on, I'll tell you what.
Oh, yeah, he had a whole thing where he was arguing with dumb atheists, and then I came in, so he got to do it again. It was great.
Exactly, redundancy. And none of them, not a single one of them was willing to go on air. I'm like, look if you can call me anything you fucking want, you can say my arguments suck.
Yeah.
But if you're going to say that I'm running from you and here I am opening up a hangout tonight, inviting you in, you're a fucking moron. I don't know how else to put it.
You ran from, what's his name, who invited you on the show that you said you will probably not be able to go on because you had a show. I forgot his name.
Oh, Andrew Rappaport.
Yeah, Rappaport. There you go. Yeah, you coward.
Steve, who could have ever predicted that you wouldn't show up for this event that was scheduled during another show?
The one I told him I wasn't going to be there. I don't get it. Look, all of us, anybody who comes to these hangouts, I don't care who the fuck you are, you got balls. Straight up. I mean, because everybody that comes in, you're putting yourself out there, and you're putting forth your position. I got mass respect for that. I honestly do. And I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. I'm not saying that if you don't do that, I don't have respect for you. People in the live chat, they put forth their views as well. But when people sit there and say, you're wrong, but I'm not going to explain to you why you're wrong in any kind of cogent manner by which I can engage with you, then those are just keyboard warriors.
Mm-hmm.
And I really have no compunction to spend a lot of time with them. And they're just like, well, you just know you're wrong. Well, I'm sorry. I have 1,000 fucking videos that you can go goddamn watch. And I mean that, like, not hyperbolically. I have 1,000 fucking videos between all my channels. Go watch one of them.
Yeah.
I don't run from anything.
Wrong about genetics, like the genetic code being a code. But that being said, I'm going to leave and never explain my position. So you guys all have a good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
See you, man.
Yeah, I'm going to head out too.
Yeah,
it's,
we're going to be calling this
late,
close.
so.
But yeah, people have different positions. That's the whole beauty of the Great Debate community. That's the whole beauty of the internet. God would be bored out of our fucking minds if we had the same position. But I have a standing rule. If you tell somebody they're wrong, you better goddamn have a pretty good argument as to why.
Exactly. There are two people that I encounter with, two kinds of people that I've encountered with that are just like that. Number one, obviously for those of them that have been familiar with the controversy I've gotten myself in, is freaking red pill.
Oh jeez.
I opened up.
I gotta admit, you know what?
I opened up a hangout.
I'll give you props there. You've been really going after those red pill guys.
Here's a funny thing too, that I didn't even think that day would come, and who knows? Maybe something will happen where finally we'll end up debating at one point. But he managed to unblock me. Max ended up unblocking me.
Look at you.
Yeah, but the thing is, I opened up a hangout called. There was an open invite to anyone involved with red pill religion to come in, and for the first time, I see Max is watching the stream. He's watching and is actually commenting in the live chat. I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, and I say you can come in. And he said, of course, he was tired, which I understand. You got to get ready to go to bed. Got work. I can understand that. But at the same time, like, he kept commenting and accusing me of being a liar and that I bullied him and sent, like, some that could qualify, like, just complete hate speech as to warranting his death. And I asked him for evidence, and he says, I'm not obligated to give you evidence at all, and why should I to someone who is a compulsive, abusive liar? And no, but not death threats. Sorry, scratch that before anyone starts using that as a thing. Abuse. He claimed I abused him in our previous discussions and all of that, and that's just, again, completely false either way. So there's that. Secondly, there are people in this thing called the furry fandom. Yes, the crazy trash culture that is out there. You hear the dumpster fire that is mentioned on the non sequitur. My friends, this dumpster fire is bigger than the non sequiturs list of dumpster fires that they end up bringing about in some of those videos. I forget who that mascot is of yours that's on that channel.
The dumpster fryer.
Yeah, the dumpster fryer. Yes, this one would make a dumpster fryer blush compared to the furry fandom, because, I mean, Jesus, with the recent controversies going on, when apparently someone has just now been discovered of being a zoophile in that fandom, and then of course you still have the freaking Nazi fur controversy where people are being. It's basically going to the time of Red Scare back then, where you could just be accused of being a communist, or you could be accused of being a witch, and it doesn't matter if they have the evidence. The accusation is just enough to get you warranted. Where I'm accused of being a furry Nazi. I am not alt.
Wow.
Right?
That's pretty harsh,
furry.
dude. That's pretty harsh.
I'm not a Nazi, and last I checked, I ain't a furry. All right, so
you're triggered, RC. You're triggered.
You seriously just say Nazi furry?
Some people, they're claiming that there's Nazi furries, and I'm apparently one of them.
But anyways,
we need some fan art for this.
Yeah.
No,
like
RC, that I will kill you.
But RC, do you not notice that, like, I never go against you when it comes to biblical passages? You know why? Because I don't know fuck all about the Bible, and I leave that for other. Okay, that's probably true, but I leave that for other people that I know are much greater with expertise. Like Lawrence probably knows the Bible epically more than I do, because I was just on a show and he actually reads this stuff for whatever reason. I mean,
osteopologist. Have you ever heard of a guy named Ray Haggins?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I highly suggest you look that guy up. He's actually known as a self-titled spiritual leader. He just completely shreds the Bible apart and everything that it stands for, and he just completely proves that every single thing in the Bible is just a complete contradiction. He goes like word by word by word, and he goes by the actual definition of each word and the translation of each word, and he just proves.
But does he disprove furries?
Does he disprove? No, he doesn't do that.
It's all about the furries.
But I would highly suggest that I see a
furries disprove themselves.
Here's something I've learned. Here's something I've learned about Bible contradictions. So there are like a bunch of websites that have like these big lists of contradictions, but when you actually like take a
I think
look
half of them
at
aren't even contradictions, though. Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I've looked at them. They go really loose in their term contradiction.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Like the thing is, I do think there are contradictions in the Bible, not like nearly to the extent that like these sites portray it as. And like there are times where I find myself fucking defending the Bible, and I'm like, I feel so dirty.
No, that's fair. And look, I don't look at the reality is, if somebody claims the Bible is infallible, all you have to do is find one. It doesn't matter if you find one or a million contradictions. It's the Bible cannot be fallible according to certain people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
And here's
you're applying logic to the situation here, though. That's the problem.
I try to.
I can understand where Lawrence is coming from when he mentions the thing, because there's actually a time that I was accused of defending Islam, and the reason why, and it's over such an issue that even though I disagree with it on what happened, here's the main thing: if you want to get and convince a Muslim of what Muhammad did as being immoral, The main thing you don't want to do is go to the Aisha thing. But there is another marriage that he did that shows not only is it culturally wrong, but even is a little suspicious. So, of course, Aisha, the main thing is that back then death rates were extremely high. They definitely should get them married at a certain age.
I mean, isn't what Adam did wrong? Isn't what Adam did wrong?
I don't know how we got to Adam from Muhammad.
No, I mean, you're just trying to put down Islam, but then, meanwhile,
No. I'm not trying to put down Islam.
Infinite amount of things in the Bible that are just absolutely just
No. Listen, I'm not trying to put down Islam.
All right. We got to get going. Jeff, did you want to add something? I know you didn't get much to talk, Jeff.
No, that's totally fine. Actually, I'm just kind of enjoying listening to you guys talk right now.
No worries.
Yeah.
2 more days of Twitter jail. Then I could actually do my dumpster fires properly.
Rip.
Yeah.
Well,
I've already been there.
The main reason I do Twitter, and people should know this by now, is I want to start shit and see what happens. I've never denied this. People you're just a total dick on Twitter. Okay.
Instigator.
And your point being? I've never denied. I go out of my way, but I never lie. I never use bad arguments, right? I even like sophistry. I've only used the only person I try to use sophistry with occasionally would be somebody like Eve Knieven, right? Because Eve is so goddamn duplicitous that... And
she blocked me.
Yeah, she's a fucking idiot. But I don't like sophistry. I'm not that good at it. But there's sometimes you can use sophistry. But Twitter is very fun to see what happens when you throw out something that is truthful and see how people respond. Because Facebook sucks for it. Because these people are bottom of the barrel, base level, just dumbasses on Facebook. But anyways, we're gonna.
Right.
Max, you've been watching. How dumb are these people, dude?
Oh, they're like incomprehensibly dumb. Like if you imagine the dumbest thing you've ever seen, you wouldn't be on the mark of how dumb the Facebook people are.
It's like the level of dumb which no greater dumbness can ever be conceived.
Right.
Yes.
What do you mean by you people?
What do you mean by chair?
Yeah.
What do you mean by lamp? It's just bad. But anyways, I know not your witness. He says I'm a bit lonely without the tweets. But man up, do your time. Thanks for giving me something fun to listen to. You're welcome. Christy, Steve, I love the sweet carrying you. Aw, Christy's so nice. She's like my favorite lesbian in the world, if I can have a favorite one.
Well, what about me? I'm a lesbian too.
Sure, let's go with that.
Well, what? I like women.
Are you sure about that?
You're right. I'm asexual. I like nobody.
Yeah. But anyways, I'm going to wrap this up. This was fun. I missed the Rum and Coke nights because I just can't drink that much. So 1 beer and I'm done. Literally, I finished my 1 can. Plus, I'm on a diet, as you guys know. Tuesday's my cheat day, but I've dropped some weight. I'm not going to tell you how much, but I'm definitely on my target for the month. I've been walking to 1 and 2 miles a day, just straight walking. So it's definitely helped. So I will see. Oh, but I asked, and I forgot to tell you guys, we didn't have a show tonight on Non Sequitur because there was a power outage. Kyle was having problems, and Dave was having problems with the power. We didn't want to take the chance, so we put up an old video from Jaronism from another channel.
Are they
I saw
like
that
in
earlier? I was trying to figure out what that was all about. So
yeah, we do that every so often. We'll throw a video that people may not know about from like my channel or someone else's channel. This was from my channel actually, but yeah, unfortunately, there's just too many technical things to have a show tonight, and we just decided probably best we wait till tomorrow. There's going to be a debate roulette anyway, so we'll definitely have that again. But yeah, start walking. I tell you, I really enjoy walking. If people haven't noticed when I'm having conversations with them, I'll be like, you know what? I'll be back in like 20 minutes because I will just go and I'll walk to the corner and then I walk back, and that is exactly 1.0 miles.
Great.
So
are you sure it's not 0.9 repetent?
Repetent? 0.9
Yeah.
repetent.
Are you sure?
How drunk are you?
Yeah, what if it's 0.999?
Yeah, man, this is why it's Rum and Coke night, man. Good night, all.